Hey you, I'm Andy Powell. Welcome to the Allcast Podcast. No topic is off the table. I hope you enjoy.
Somehow. And it is mixing the input sound with... Oh, man, I used to know it. Anyway, I had the same problem, and I looked it up, and it was basically this interface situation where... And I feel like I was a little lower when I was listening to it back. I felt like it's a little lower. But anyway, yeah, so sometimes auto is fine for me, you know? Oh, that's what it is. It's the latency of it's the lag on the computer. So I have more lag, so I have to use auto, but it's not as echoey. You're basically hearing the input as it goes through the computer, and then it bypasses the computer and goes out, because I assume that it bypasses the computer, and that's why you hear an echo. It's in the computer and bypassed at the same time, so that way you don't hear a slight delay in the latency of the recording.
Okay. I don't fully understand how that signal flow works, but I know that as I was trying to figure out the issue and isolate it, I would disconnect one of so there's two preamps. Each microphone has a preamp, and they're up top there.
Okay.
So I disconnect the preamp and try it that way, and then realize okay, well, it's not. I basically ruled those out, and then I can choose to monitor in the headphones directly through the preamp or through the interface. And so I tried putting each headphone on its own preamp, but then you can only monitor that microphone, so that one wouldn't be able to hear the other.
Yeah, true.
So I had to put it in. Yeah. So
wait,
the splitter
is that pedal your interface?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's not really for that, but it's I got it at a really good price, and it's
holy shit.
It's a looper board.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, dude, it's so cool. I've only used it a few times.
We were talking about it. Was it Head Rush?
Yeah, Head Rush.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's badass.
You mentioned it. I was like, holy fuck, those things are...
Yeah.
I'm into looping too.
Okay. That's the thing about it, is that it's open source, so I can program any button to do anything.
Yeah.
And it can literally do anything you want it to do, but I don't know enough about looping to even know what to set as what. So I was just farting around with the initial settings.
Yeah, man. The interface, like the user interface, is like so important on like a very complex piece of equipment. And like you could get lost in textbooks trying to figure out like dialogue boxes and all this jazz. And that one definitely looks like more computer than knob. And that sometimes, at least you have like a color display on the thing that allows you to go through some menus and settings. But man, yeah, that does take like basically a degree and a college education in order to use properly.
Navigating through it's pretty user friendly.
Yeah,
Each of the buttons has its own designation, and then it has like one button that you push. It's like a shift or a control on a keyboard, where you push that button and then it changes all the functions of the buttons.
Okay.
So it's like a secondary menu of 12 options. So there's 24 standard options, and then so when you're doing something like looping one of those inputs or one of the tracks, the blue buttons, those blue lights will change colors based on what you're doing. So
Jesus.
Yeah, it's just about figuring out.
It seems like it has built-in effects too, like a multi-effects processor.
Yeah, it does. And it's stuff you can download and upload to it. And my biggest issue when I was trying to build a song with it was the timing. Like I would make a drum beat, do, 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 and then I would loop that. But where the stop or the start and the stops are of the looping, I didn't know. So I would start the guitar on a section where I thought it was starting the loop, but it wouldn't record the guitar at that same time. So I don't know how to sync those up. So it sounded terrible.
Yeah, the way that it actually kicks in, I guess, yeah. The loopers that I would have would just be the foot switch. So you're like punch in, punch out, and then let it roll maybe twice as you're letting it play through, and then you're ready for the next part you do. And then you hit it on the one, and then you can have an auto. You want to click it back out as it comes back around again, or you'll double that loop up.
Right.
and I guess maybe you had it like in an auto setting where you were like, here's where I want to start, and then you have so many measures of. But was your drum machine set to some kind of metronome or something on that, like a built-in metronome, or was your drumming just your drumming?
I don't know.
I see, because like there's quantization, and it basically calculates the BPM based on when you punch in and when you punch out. It'll automatically divide it up like
that. I think is probably what it was doing, because it would be different than what I thought I was recording to match up with the original length of amounts of measures to the first one.
Because looping without a metronome or some kind of like timing that's within the machine of the looper is like traveling without a map in some regard.
Yeah.
So if you have like a built-in drum beat that's in there, then it's operating on its own timing.
Yeah.
And now you're going to punch in when it thinks it's the one is.
That makes sense.
And then you're punching out. You're probably going to punch out after 4 measures, 8 measures, whatever. And now it's on sync, but because it doesn't have that, it doesn't know what your timing is. It's just like you're punching, you punch out, and it's like it's always going to be a little off. Or whatever. Yeah, you need to use that ruler.
I got to figure out how to do that on this device.
Yeah.
Like those the manual pedals where you just click it on when it's time, click it off when it's time.
Yeah.
Those are easy to use, but that's only, you have to have a pedal for that one function, right?
What do you mean by one function?
Like a looper pedal. That's some of them. That's all that it does is
I see.
Is loop. Whereas,
but the one I have is actually, I have a simpler one. It's 2 tracks of loops, but it has its own built-in like drum machines, metronome, whatever. You can turn that off and on. So as long as you're in time with the machine, you can turn it off and then record your own. So if I just put a click on. But then it's cool because you'll do one loop and then you can click over to track 2 and then have a separate loop going. And then maybe you'll add the second loop, more parts to that, and then stop the first loop. So then it gives you that, like, it drops off, like you have like, okay, say I was doing a rhythm part on track 1. Now I'm going to do a lead part on track 2. Now I can keep that lead part, hit stop on track 1, and then play a new rhythm behind that lead part that I just did. So that I got really good with that, and then I bought another one which was a little more complex, which was more based on the drum machines, and it had a lot more drum machines, drum parts, and that is set up to have part A, part B. So it'll have drum part A and then drum part B, and then when you click over to the next track to record the next part, it'll throw a fill in real quick and go to drum machine B, and allows you to kind of like create more of like song with it.
Oh, cool.
And also loop. But yeah, I got into that quite a bit too. And now,
what loop? Which one is that?
Boss number RC something or other.
Yeah.
I forget. Like, I think it's 10R. They keep like changing up. They change the numbers and then like they change the nomenclature of the numbers. It wasn't just like 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing, So like the one is like RC20, and the new one I think is like something like 10R.
They got an RC500. They got all kinds of stuff.
Those newer ones are cool that you can use with your hands. I don't know if you know Mark Ribier.
Mm-mm.
Oh, really?
No, who's that? Oh,
dude. So he's like a loop artist.
Okay.
And he are we rolling or this is it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so he's a loop artist, and he's got he's a keyboardist, and he has his metronome laptop set up to set all the sounds within his his keyboard, and then he also has the looper, and he'll have a couple microphones, and he'll do one microphone for vocals and one for like a shaker or some kind of timing, and he just at just riffing basically will just create a whole song like in his living room wearing a Komodo. He just like hangs out in his living room wearing Komodos, just like jamming.
Yeah.
And around the pandemic, he became really big. He was just like doing all these like live loop sessions streaming on YouTube, and he became really big.
Cool.
And I started following him and watching, and I would just like let him play, but he's kind of funny. He's like a short little nerdy guy. And he must have started lifting weights over the pandemic or something, because he's all of a sudden got like really fit and in shape, and he's like kind of muscular now. And it's pretty funny to see like this nerdy guy have muscles and wearing this Komodo. And he's just, but he's got this like soulful, like jazz man voice, you know, and he's really talented. But some of the whole freestyle, and he'll like, you know, just kind of loop like a, you know, like, start on the one, start on the one, start on the one, start on the one.
That's part of his song.
Loops it. And like, yeah, singing the crazy sounds right out of the top of my head, you know, and just like goes on and on and on, you know.
So he works himself into the groove, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, and then he'll get on keyboard and just bust out like these like awesome, like he's really good at the keys. He's just a really great musician. But I watched him now, and he's headlining festivals, and he was just playing at Red Rocks. Like, I think last year was like his first time playing Red Rocks to like a whole, like he's got a whole fucking thing. Now I think he's in New York City, I think, or some city, and he's doing live links like just in like Central Park, like, and like 100 people show up, and like it's like a concert, and he's just ad-libbing on the fly, like.
Awesome. You know of Tosh Sultana?
Oh yeah, I've heard of that name. I think I've looked him up. Is it him or no? Her?
It's a woman from Australia.
Yeah.
She is sick. She's so good at it too.
She's very good
I saw
at
her at Red Rocks, and it just blew my freaking mind. Because like the stuff on her albums, the stuff that you see online, YouTube, that's good. It's really good. But then in concert, like she busts out instruments that you've never seen her play.
It's like a South American sound or something.
No, that's a different guy called Porangi, who's from Brazil.
No, I'm thinking of a woman that I thought was a loop artist.
Okay.
Where's she from?
She's from Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's cool. It's like it's contemporary. She uses a lot of guitar and keyboard. She plays bass. She plays the drums. She plays the pan flute. She does all this stuff and combines it all, and just sounds incredible. Those people are talented because they're able to keep track of all these different layers all at the same time, and then know when to turn one off and then start playing another one. It's just like you got to put a lot of time into that.
Yeah. So when I was in a band, and this is my third band, and I was lead. Well, we were a power trio, so I had the guitar set up with like all of the toys for pedals, and then I would have my looper, my 2-track looper, and our song structure was all over the place, and you know, our genre kind of blended a lot, and so we would do these songs that incorporated like live looping, and I would have to practice. I'd be in my basement just like constantly going through like the song or whatever, like, okay, this song starts with like a loop, and I'll do a loop here, and then they'll let that play, and then I'll come in with like a lead line on it, and as the drums pick up, I'll hit that loop off, and then we'll play. And then I started using it as like this buffer in between songs, where I would have maybe a pre-recorded loop, and I would hit that on, and I would tune while the drummer was just kind of just jamming.
Okay.
You know, like we'd never stopped and said, "Hey, how's it going, everyone? Man, thanks for coming out tonight and keeping the scene alive." You know, like, and we just always kept it moving. So like when we would play a set, you know, it'd be like a 25-minute to 30-minute set of maybe only 6 songs that all blended into one another and had all these intermixed loops and sounds.
That's the way to do it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was like a sight. Like I've recorded every live show. I would have like a little Tascam recorder, handheld recorder, and I recorded every live show. And you could hear people afterwards, like, because we would build it big, you know, like, it's such the pinnacle of the fucking part. And then it gets real quiet and soft and jazzy and blues. And then, we build it back up again. Yeah. You know, like.
Do you have it recorded anywhere?
Yeah.
That I can go listen to, like on iTunes or something? What is it? What's it called?
So that project was called Circadian Frequency.
Okay.
And it was a 3-piece band based out of Jersey, and we play shows in Philly a lot.
Guitar, drums, and bass?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, standard power trio, and
you sang.
I sang and played guitar and did all the looping and all that shit too.
You wrote all the lyrics?
Yeah, I wrote all the songs too.
Awesome.
And well, like we would write it with like long form jams. We would have jam sessions, and then I would record those jam sessions, go back, listen to it, chop out the best pieces, and then kind of make those songs based on like whatever riffs I brought to that jam, and say, oh, I think we should go from here to here to here. So it wasn't like I sat down and wrote it all out, but at the same time, it was like in between. I was like kind of like taking these bricks of great jams and kind of just saying, this is where we should go here. So it became sort of like this, I don't want to say abomination. It has some sense to it, but it's not, we're not writing ditties for the kiddies. I'm not on the top 40 radio kind of situation here. We'd have some verses and choruses. We would get lost in a whole like bridge of like a jazzy blues part. And then that would build really big into like some real heavy, like punk rock riffs and tempos and stuff like that. I used to tell people we were basically if Rush was punk rock.
Okay.
But like not like in punk rock as in like fashion, just more of like a DIY situation. So we recorded everything in my basement. I learned how to record and would record all the drums. I'd have like 7 mics on the drums.
Oh, wow. What did you use to record at that time?
So that was was it Tascam? No, Korg D32. It's a 32 track standalone recording console. And that had 8 inputs in and 8 inputs that I could do to 8 simultaneous channels, tracks, and we would record everything, track for track to a metronome. I would program all the metronome out. The interface was like the size of like a Casio fucking watch, almost like like talking like Game Boy graphics.
Yeah.
And and like so like to be able to do it, like I don't know, I learned how to do it and I got really good at it, and so it was like, this is the only way I know how to do it. And that's what we were saying earlier about like Ableton and stuff. Like I'm just now starting to like get into DAW, because at the time you needed a really like hardcore computer. Like when I started getting the recording, you needed like a decent computer in order to like be able to record that kind of, thing. So I just started out with like a little Boss 4-track and then a Boss 8-track and then a Boss 16-track. And then I think, Boss stopped making, I love Boss equipment. Boss and Roland, I love that equipment. They were really user friendly. The Korg had a 32 track, and I was like, man, I really want to like add a lot of sound. Like I want to do a lot of different things. So 32 tracks I had 16 faders, and you would go like 16 and then hit the one switch, and then it would go 17 to 32. So you'd like have all these other sounds on this, but the mixing process, the whole thing. Yeah, I did it all. I just wanted a piece, like a recorded thing that I did the artwork for, I did the recording for, I wrote the stuff, I worked it all out with the band, I arranged it, like they wrote their part. Well, the bassist didn't really write his part too much, but the drummer and I were childhood friends since 16, and so he got into drugs, he got out of drugs, this was his escape from drugs, and we let it roll. So yeah, but like, all right. So we're just rolling. Just you talking.
Yeah, just rolling, just talking. We started off talking about music and figured I'd just hit the record button and see where it goes. I could chop out whatever I can.
No, I don't mind at all. Like we were just riffing. I just I didn't know if you were gonna like have
do an intro or something.
Yo,
hello. Let's do one. Let's do an intro.
Hey, coming at you live. This is 99.5. This is Tom with the kid on the mic over there, and we're just coming at you here in Radio Land.
Hey! This is your co-host Andy P. What's going on? We have Tom here today in the studio, and we're going to talk about some things today. What about you, Tom? What do you think about all that? Pretty amazing,
like
pretty crazy stuff.
The kids in the scene today, they just don't know what it's like. But
well, no, because you have this weird thing where you went from having like analog equipment to digital equipment, and the analog stuff that you're talking about, it takes a certain skill, but it's kind of finite, right? Like you can learn all the equipment 100%, everything it does, the end. And then you give it something like, and it takes some real skill to actually play the instruments to record onto the analog stuff. But then you go to digital, and then there's infinite things you can do, and you don't have to have any skill to make the sounds sound like music.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to play an instrument to make cool music now digitally.
That's very true. Yeah, I'm starting to learn that a little bit more. I have like a little, a USB keyboard, controller. And, like it's kind of nice to just sit back and like press around on some things or make a little beat now.
Is that like a drum pad or like?
And it have like drum pad part at the top and then keys, like maybe 2 scales of keys.
Oh yeah, okay, I've seen one of those. Mm-hmm. That's cool.
And so like that'll sync up with Ableton, and so I'll make a beat real quick, I'll have a metronome going and there's the backbone, make that beat real quick, and then say, hey, let me get a sound over here, let me get a bass sound, or let me get, some just keys sound or whatever. What's funny is like the electronic stuff's cool. And it's probably something that I could get into more if I started to spend money on like the sound packs and all that stuff. Cause like I feel like Ableton has some good sounds, but I'm not feeling like it's not like I don't want to say realistic. There is some parts that are realistic in it, but like the sounds of it and stuff, I feel like that's where you got to spend the money. I feel like
the stock ones it comes with, you can kind of tell they're digitally made.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and I've never been much of a keyboard guy because I feel like there's some sounds on there, like brass, and it's like, and it's just like that doesn't sound like brass.
The funny thing is when you layer it onto a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
You oftentimes can't tell.
Yeah, that's true. Well, here's a fun fact for you. That Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion. I don't know if you're a fan or anything. I was kind of a fan growing up in the 90s. But, November Rain, he's got all of this piano and the symphony in the background and everything. Yeah. All that shit is done with a keyboard. Axl turned into a nerd and got crazy with the keyboard and made all of those sounds. That's not an orchestra. That's fucking Axl Rose playing it on a keyboard. And it's so funny to think Axl Rose of this rock star, the archetype of the rock star. I'm showing up late to the show and I'm creating a riot and all this shit or whatever is sitting at home playing with this massive fucking. I can't imagine how much money he spent on the sounds, because, that started getting into the era of this is not a digital recreation of what it could sound like. This is an actual recording of what a cello sounds like.
Yeah.
E.
So they record a cello in this note and then they download that information of the actual recording to the keyboard. So when you hit the button, it plays the actual sound that's been recorded.
Yeah. And then so when you're thinking about analog to digital converters, 256 or, how digitized are you going to make something, right? So the higher resolution is it's the same thing as your camera or your TV. Is now being recorded. So if I'm recording the sound, how high fidelity I'm going to make it. And to think that Use Your Illusion was in the 90s, early 90s, that equipment or whatever was probably state of the art, top of the line shit.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, to your point, it sounds just like the real thing when you mix it all in. That blew my mind, dude. I thought man, I can't believe they paid all those orchestra people to come in and record on their album. Did you know that though?
I had no idea.
All right, because you didn't act that surprised.
No, I think that's become a habit of mine.
Holy shit. All right, all right, so we gotta tell the audience here
what happened today.
Well, not just what happened today, but how you and I met up, and how this is pretty funny about how very similar we are in a lot of ways. We're into the same shit.
Yeah,
you live around the corner from me.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and it was one of those. I don't know. I feel like it happens a lot with motorcyclists.
Mm-hmm.
So we met riding motorcycles. I was sitting at a stoplight. There were 2 or 3 cars ahead of me. And there's a bike lane to my right and then another turn lane beyond that. And the light turns green and then you go zipping by in the bike lane around the front of the cars through the light that just turned green. And I'm like, this motherfucker. That's the kind of riding that I did a few years ago. And so I'm thinking, man, I wish I had a sport bike. It'd be on. I'd go race this guy up over the hill there. And So I ended up catching up to you, and we stopped at the light, and I don't even remember what.
I looked over.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, "What's that?"
Yeah. You were about to go on some ride up to Jerome, right?
Dude, for whatever reason, I was like, I don't know why, but I gotta ask this guy where he's heading.
Yeah.
Because I was on just like, hey, I got the afternoon free. Let's see where I end up. I got like a couple hours to kill before I got to be back.
And I was about to go on my own little adventure.
Yeah. And it was just like one of those things where you come up and as a full-grown adult male, you don't like walk up to strange men and say, hey, how's it going? I'm not gay, but man, we could be friends.
Yeah.
And you don't do that, right? And like you got to fight past that urge to do it. And sometimes you feel like some kind of intuition or whatever. It was like, I bet you if you asked this dude where he's going right now, you might make a friend. Or you could totally embarrass yourself, and it wouldn't matter. He's a stranger.
Nah, it's
you
not
know what I'm
embarrassing.
saying?
It's not embarrassing either.
Yeah,
way.
but like that's the thing that goes on in my head or whatever when I'm thinking about like reaching over and saying hello to somebody. And then maybe that's like the East Coast thing or whatever, where everybody kind of keeps to themselves.
No, it's here too. Not so much in this particular area, but you go down to Phoenix and drive around. People ain't talking to each other.
No,
They're like, get out of my way.
Yeah. I see. I grew up around that. But yeah, so I'm like leaning over, like, where are you heading? And you're like, yeah, I don't even know what you said, but you're like up over
Somewhere down the Bradshaws.
Yeah, you might have said Jerome and Mingus.
No, because you were going to go to Jerome, and I was going to take Walker south.
I wasn't going to Jerome. I was going to Bumblebee.
Oh, you were going to go to Bumblebee. So then I was going to Jerome.
Yeah.
And you were going to Bumblebee. And then you're like, oh, hey, I'll just tag along with you. And then...
Well, we sat at the one light, and I was like, where are you heading? You were like, there. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm heading to Bumblebee. And I had been really planning on going and checking this southern route out for a bit. I had just been riding down 17, and it was just like, man, I got to get on those roads. And this was my first opportunity to get out there and do that. And it was just like... All right, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm heading this way. I was like, oh man, cool, nice to meet you, man. And then I think you were like, hey, let me get your number or whatever. We exchanged numbers at the next light.
You don't have to say I asked for your number. Come on.
Oh, did I say it?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm just
No, I mean, I don't know if I'm remembering that part right.
I'm
not usually quick with the number
I think
thing.
I was saying I'm pulling into Costco if you want to stop and talk. And I pulled into the Costco gas station. And we stopped, and I got gas, and then some guy came and yelled at us for taking too long. Do you remember that?
I did. Yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
we were bullshitting for a bit.
Yeah, that's when we exchanged info, and you were like, "Oh, can I come up with you to Jerome, or do you want to?"
No. So I had made the decision at the next light. I was just like, we stopped at the one light. We said, "Hey, what's up? I'm going this way. You're going that way." Oh, cool. We stopped at the next light. You got my number. I'm pretty sure you got my number at the thing. You had your phone out on your dash, and you were like, "Du-du-du-du." So I was like,
Okay.
cool, man, I'll get up with you. And then I made a decision. I'm going to do my own thing. And then we went through the light, and I'm like going back and forth in my head, and I'm like, dude, what are you going to do? Ride by yourself? Like, this could be a friend, man. This could be like a dude that you hang out with or whatever, and you're going to go ride by yourself. Like, why don't you? And so basically at the next light, I followed you around the turn, and then we pulled up at the stop sign in front of Costco, and I was just like, I'm going with you. And then we hung out at Costco and exchanged info or whatever. We bullshit for a while.
Yeah.
But right away, it was just like, I don't know. I knew right away that like, man, you got to talk to this guy. And he lives around, and I didn't know at the time, he lived around the corner from me.
Yeah.
And it was just like, dude, like
super close.
I just moved here. I'm looking for friends. I'm looking for like-minded people,
Yeah.
you know? And, everyone that I've met so far is all dirt biking, you know? So it's like, I got a lot of dirt bike friends, but now I got this ADV bike and I want to go explore. And, you're over here going on your own trip, you know? And it's like,
I think
all right,
my
that's
bike
my
was
people.
fully loaded too. I think I had like a whole camp set up and everything. That was my first like test run of having a fully loaded setup that could go for like five days, I think, on that thing.
Damn.
And I didn't even stay one night or whatever. We ended up going up to Jerome and then cutting across that mountain range down to Cherry. I think it was Cherry Road that
Around
we
Mingus.
took.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was cool.
And yeah, we were just on the road, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, let's go up to Jerome. And then you stopped, and you were like, hey, how about we go out this way? And I was like, that's a dirt road. And you're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, you ride dirt too? And you're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, all right, well, let's go this way. And we ended up like riding like all day
On dirt.
on dirt and ended up out in Cherry. I'd never been down that road. We didn't know how gnarly it was going to get. It got pretty gnarly, especially for the bike you were riding.
Yeah, that thing doesn't really look like an off-road bike at all.
That's exactly right.
Dude, it can hang.
It can hang. And I was totally like, all right, this dude can ride. Like, if you're riding that bike down these roads, you can hang. And I was on a time crunch. I had to get back. Right. My wife had a book signing. It was really important that I go into town to go to the book signing, And so,
You're almost late, huh?
Dude, I was like, I got to keep moving. I'm sorry, man. And I was definitely ahead. But, dude, yeah. And that's how we met, just on a whim.
Yeah.
And then, whatever, off and on, people got lives and stuff like that. Hadn't seen him, hadn't talked to him, bumps into him. Like
at the Maverick every like twice a week.
Yeah, we'd bump into each other. Hey, what's up, man? Hey, call me, man. I'm doing things, whatever. And I was like, I keep poking.
Oh man! Know? And then I went on that ride, that camping trip up to the top of Crown King. And I was like, I don't know if I sent you pictures or something. You're like, dude, what the hell? I've been waiting to go.
I was like, what the fuck?
I
was like, yo, I've been waiting for you to call and like go ride, and you're like riding with other guys. You're out there riding with other guys. You got my number. It was so funny. I was like, all right, this guy don't want any friends, but I'm gonna keep poking him.
Yeah.
And then we would bump each other at the gas station. Then I drove down the road and I like passed you on the motorcycle, and I was like, I keep bumping in you.
Yeah.
It's just like, those are like things where you're just like, I don't know, man. You can't, I don't know. I live by that kind of thing, man. The synchronous things are like, I don't know, like we keep bumping each other. There's a reason to bump into you for some reason, like the universe is bringing us together for whatever reason. And then the more we talk, the more we realize we have more in common. You're going through a lot of like relationship stuff.
Yeah.
I've been through a lot of relationship stuff. I'm kind of like in the process of rebuilding a lot of stuff with my ex-wife that I've been divorced with for 4 years. There's been like a lot of things. Then I come over to your house, you're a musician. Oh, we didn't even talk about that. We've been talking about motorcycles this whole time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, you run podcasts and you have recording equipment. It was like, me too.
Yeah, and then the comedy, the familiarity with the comedy stuff. Too, it's like the Kill Tony thing. You watched all the last 20 Kill Tonys or whatever. As soon as I discovered that, I watched like 2 of them, or no, I was listening to them on my drive because I drive twice a week, pretty far.
Yeah,
it was like a 3-hour drive twice a week, and I was listening to it, and I was like, yeah, this is okay, but it's not that funny. So then I watched one, and it became my ritual. Like every Monday night, I'd watch this thing, and it was awesome. It's freaking hilarious. Kill Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
Dude, I went and saw him. I went and saw Joe Rogan do a stand-up comedy tour, right? And he had Tony Hinchcliffe opened for him.
Wow.
And I was like, I was crying laughing at Tony's stuff. And,
really?
And Joe's, like, I've listened to so much of Joe Rogan's podcasts. Like, I kind of know what he's going to say next, almost. But not really. But he was not quite as funny as Tony to me at that time.
I've never heard Tony stand up. I've only seen his show. And he's really good off the cuff and on the fly. But I'm sure if a guy that's that good off the cuff is probably a pretty good writer, And I think he's written for I don't know if he's written for late night stuff like that. Like he was a writer for a while. So I know that he's got quite a brain in him, and his show's awesome. And I didn't know anything about it. The first time I heard it was when I used to do stand up in Philly. A lot of comedians that were in the Philly scene were like trying to get on because he went on tour. Like Tony went on tour and brought the show to Philly. So the main like venue in Philly is oh my God, it's not Punchline. Why am I blanking on the name? Oh my God. It's been too long since I've been in fucking Philly. Anyway, the main Jesus, yo.
I stopped recording.
Oh.
What's the name of that place?
How is this not Helium? There you go. Oh my God. I have. All right, we can go.
I never stopped recording.
Ah, good.
I was hoping that.
Here's the funny part is that I don't know why I couldn't think of Helium, but Helium's the main venue. I've actually performed on that stage.
Cool.
In like a little Philly's Funniest competition.
How long would you go for? Like 5 minutes or 20 minutes? Or?
You get 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Is that
sometimes
an open mic
3
situation?
Minutes. Open mic situation would be different. Like you can do a 3 minute or a 5 minute. Usually 3 to 5 minutes. But man, like sometimes because you get it there, it's first come first serve. So people will get there like an hour early and then sign up and then like put their name down, and then if you weren't well known or whatever, you might get bumped. So you'd be there waiting around like, hey, I got here when it opened at 8, but like I'm not going on until 11:30, and it's a Tuesday.
Ooh.
Some shit like that. And then by then, no one's in the place. It's really hard to get started.
So did you get paid for those 5 minutes, or did you have
No.
to pay to do those 5 minutes, or neither?
Neither. Well, I think maybe there's probably places that were having, like pay to play situation like that. But no, this was all, you didn't get paid. You went up there, you were telling all your jokes in front of all the other comedians who've already heard your jokes before. If they're not going to laugh, it's like a competition kind of thing in that whole thing. The Philly's Funniest is something that Helium throws on, where it's like they sell tickets. You bring 10 people, you sell like a lot of tickets or whatever. You go, you have your certain night, and then certain comedians, they go up there and then they get picked. Like they'll pick 3 or something like that, and then they'll come back the next week and then pick 3, and so it's kind of like an elimination round until you find like the funniest guy. I was in the first round. I got knocked out. It was like whatever. I wasn't the greatest at it. I was still like perfecting it, but what I was saying was, oh yeah, I knew a lot of comedians that were talking about this Kill Tony. It's coming to Philly, and I want to try to get on. And so I still have to go back and look.
Like get your name pulled out of the bucket of names. Okay.
Yeah. So all the comedians in town are like, they're fucking, I want to get my name in that bucket.
Yeah.
And so I saw like 1 or 2 people, another guy who had a podcast, and there was a podcast called Nerds with Words back in Philly. And it was a pretty good podcast. I was a guest on that one before, but I think one of them, the dude Adam, got on Kill Tony and did his act or whatever. But I don't remember, like, because I wasn't in the Kill Tony, I didn't know what it was. I didn't really pay attention to like how funny it was, or like how bad Tony ripped him to him or whatever. So I want to go back now and go and look up those Kill Tonys in Philly and see
if you know anybody there.
He's going on tour again, by the way. He's coming up with another tour, so we should keep an eye out for.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool to go see him live.
Yeah, and then the real question would be, do you put your name in that bucket?
No.
Oh my God, dude,
Not
it'd be
me,
so
man.
hard to go there and
No.
not put my name in the bucket.
No,
I would have to. I would be freaking out and trying to get like a quick 1 minute set or whatever from my old shit. Like, pull it out of my ass just in case.
And I got nothing. I'd have to start from scratch, and all my ideas I would feel like are coming from other stuff I've heard.
Yeah.
So I'd be, I'm not good. I wouldn't be good for that.
Well, no, and I get that. It makes sense, like why a normal, let's just call you a consumer at this point. It makes sense why a normal consumer would say, "Fuck no, I'll never go on that show." But
Well, it's not I would never. It's like there's so many other things that I want to put my energy toward, and it's just not one of them anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're not, this is what I'm trying to say is that if you weren't aspiring at any point in your life to become like a stand-up comedian, or even just do it on the side, which is me, I just did it for the love. I wasn't trying to become anything.
Yeah.
I have a career, but like I wasn't trying to make it famous. But
I won a talent show.
Oh yeah,
at a church, at my church growing up, by doing a stand-up comedy bit, and they actually didn't give me the award, the prize, because the prize was like for like a group of people. It was like a limo ride and a bunch of concert tickets to some concert. And they didn't give it to me. They gave it to like the runner-up because they were a group of people.
What the fuck?
I know, dude. So that's hilarious. Funny enough, while we're on the subject, that's not the only time that's happened. So I was in the military and I shot Brigade Top Gun. Our platoon was invited to a Top Gun competition. Mm-hmm. And I shot Top Gun. I got the most points. It's points based. And I got the most out of anybody in their brigade or our group that was invited. Mm-hmm. And they didn't give me the award because we were invited and they wanted to give it to somebody from their own unit.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I know, it was funny.
Damn.
But it's kind of, I don't care. I don't care. It's just, it's funny that
it's enough to care.
It's enough to know that I got the most points. That's enough for me.
It's just kind of crazy because like I feel like the military is definitely based on like there's like a set of morals and values and like certain kind of thing there, dude. And like it's kind of crazy. That's some shit that you would think would go down at a LA open mic and not the fucking military where everything's honor based. Honor, speed, agility, competition. These are all things that are important to the natural soldier.
You must have been watching the recruiter commercials because that ain't it.
Oh.
No, you can get promoted based on memorization rather than merit.
Yeah, that's true.
Rather than ability of leadership. You can, there's a lot of people that became unfit in the military and they just somehow got by. Because there's like your job and then there's being a soldier. If you can check the box and do your job, then they'll like let the soldier shit slide. And so, like, if you can't pass your fitness test or whatever, you get a lot of leeway, and they put you in certain groups, stuff like that. So,
well, I guess at the end of the day, they just need
bodies.
They need bodies to keep those seats
warm.
warm.
Yeah,
I need a body for this Apache helicopter pronto.
Yeah, that's a different story. Guys like that, those guys are top notch.
Okay.
There's certain,
that makes sense.
There's certain job fields. It's just like any company you have. You have the office, the desk guys.
Yeah.
You have the guys in the kitchen, and they're all soldiers. They're all supposed to maintain this certain standard. And then you have the infantry. And even in the infantry, there's those guys that just they made it through somehow, but they can't hang.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's like special ops, which those guys are just.
Yeah, well, if you're going to trust, like, a $10 million Apache helicopter to some douchebag from fucking Mississippi or whatever, he better have a brain inside that boy. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, man.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, dude, that is a world that I do not want to know, man. Oh, man. How's that?
It's cruel.
It's cruel?
It's cruel, but there's a lot of love there.
Yeah. There is definitely a brotherhood, man. Like,
yeah.
I felt that in football. Growing up playing football and stuff, you get that brotherhood, and I really think that football is like grooming you towards the military in some ways, So I can understand that.
Yeah, like shit talking is a love language, and hazing can be a love language.
So it's like growing up in New Jersey.
Could be. I don't know. I didn't grow up in New Jersey.
I did. Yes, that's definitely what it's like.
It's a lot of things. It also depends who you're with, where you're at, what their standards are. Because you have leadership that doesn't enforce the standards, and then you have leaders that over-enforce things. So it's really a luck of the draw as kind of like what unit you end up in. But it's really up to the soldier, the individual, to maintain their own, standards. Whatever they want to put into it is a lot of times what they'll get out of it. But the Army can really screw you over. I was in the Army, I can't speak for the other branches, but they can screw you over a lot too. Like if you want to go to a certain school, like let's say you want to go be airborne, that's a certain school that you have to get into. And your chain of command, your leadership can just say no, and there's nothing you can do about it if that's the case. So there's stuff like that.
Damn.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff.
Whew. Yeah, that's like, I don't know that world, and I respect people for doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing but the highest respect. It was funny. My mom was like my mom's like Marge Simpson, like the mom's mom.
You can do anything you want, but don't join the military.
Kind of something like that, right? And like the military recruiters would be calling, and it was like, yeah, is Thomas Bair there? And she was like, senior or junior? And I was like, oh, junior. And like, it was like, who's this? And it was like, oh, I'm from the U.S. Army, and I'm just calling to see if he was ever thinking about joining or whatever, And just like, please lose this number. He does not want to be a soldier, like hanging up on recruiting people and stuff like that. And then like, I remember her bringing up something before about like how the JROTC is basically just grooming kids to become, military soldiers and stuff like that. I mean, my mom was sort of like a hippie, growing up, kind of like.
It can also teach you discipline, even if you don't join.
Oh yeah,
100%. JROTC. I think like in high school, you're talking, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think like knowing the people that I knew that were in JROTC, they definitely needed discipline, and it was kind of weird that they like signed up for it. Like a lot of my friends were part of the JROTC. It was kind of funny And I think it was like the only reason why they joined was like there was like some kind of like cool ass trip that they were going to take him on. It was like, man, that sounds like a cool trip. I guess I'll wear a uniform to school every Wednesday and keep my metal shiny and all this crap. Like,
Man, not me.
not me, man. It's kind of crazy. You would say not you either.
Well, I did something similar but different, but it wasn't associated with school. It was the local police department put on something called the Explorer program, which is kind of the same type of thing every like once. Yeah, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Because once a week you go to these meetings and they teach you certain stuff. They teach you stuff that they don't give out. I had an access badge. I was 16 and I had like one of those key fob card deals to get into the police departments.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I'm just like this kid. And they gave it to me because I was like some certain rank in this Explorer program. And so
How old is this?
How old is what?
Are you?
At the time I was like 16.
Okay.
It was 14, 15, 16 that I did it.
Wow.
I don't remember when I got the badge, but it gave me the opportunity to go on ride-alongs all the time. And that was awesome because I really wanted to be a police officer for a long time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wanted to do motorcycle officer, and I wanted to be a canine cop. I wanted to do SWAT. I wanted to do everything, undercover narcotics. I wanted to do everything.
You want to do the whole Paw Patrol. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and then I turned 17, graduate high school, and I graduated at 16, and then realize like I can't be a cop till I'm 21. I don't know what I'm going to do for 5 years, but it ain't college. And so then I turned 17 a couple months later and left for the Army. So later.
So did you ever have a thought of like coming back out of the Army and going into?
That was my plan. It was to
be a cop.
Yeah, go into the military, get out, become a police officer. But when I got out of the Army, it's this funny thing between me and my dad at the time is when I was leaving, he was like, when you get back, you can live with us while you go to school and use your GI Bill. And I was like, okay, perfect. That's my plan. It was my plan throughout the entire Army career. And then I get back and my dad's like, I never said that.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How old is this?
This was when I was 20. So this was 12 years ago.
Okay.
So me and my dad butted heads, got my own apartment, went to motorcycle mechanic school. And then, during that living in my apartment, I had an old, one of my best friends growing up became my roommate, and he had gotten into smoking weed. I'd never smoked weed, but I realized through living with him while he smoked weed all the time that like, I couldn't put this guy in jail. And before
that's awesome.
Before having that, it is.
It's kind of
it
awesome,
really.
really.
No, dude, it's great because before having that exposure, I was just biased. I was just like, oh, you smoke weed, you're a problem.
Yeah,
you're a criminal.
Yeah.
You're this. Like, I had no idea.
No, well, you've been groomed. You've been programmed since 14, 15, 16. That these are all bad people, and then you're living with one.
It's the blanket statements. Drugs are bad.
Yeah,
People that use drugs are druggies, and they're bad. It's like, come on. Man, that's interesting. Because I was going to ask you, like, how the hell did you go from, like, going on police ride-ons as a kid and then into the military, and then the pictures I saw today of you were playing Didgeridoo and fucking... Down hippie lane.
Yeah, you had jet black feet. I could feel it from the pictures. And you were making your own granola. And
well, that's hilarious that you say that thing about the feet. You know Mount Humphrey in Flagstaff?
No.
So that's the tallest mountain in Arizona.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it's tall. It's like 13,000 feet or something. So I hiked that mountain barefoot.
Oh my God.
And it was like,
what the fuck?
It was perfect at the time. There's some rocky spots, but most of it
This is hilarious because it's so funny because some people could see this as such a beautiful thing that you like realize like that these people are not that bad, but then other people could be listening to this and be like, you see what happens? You see what happens when you hang out with those gateway
do drugs, you start walking around without shoes on.
It's not even that you were doing gateway drugs, it's you were hanging out with gateway friends even. You know, like, oh my God, you're like, I got jetback feet and I'm climbing mountains with no fucking shoes on. Like only a year later from hanging out with a dude smoking reefer. Jesus Christ, that's hilarious.
No, it was it was a couple years later.
Yeah,
it was a year later probably. Yeah.
I was just doing the Forrest Gump version of your life. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
So I never used any substances. Well, like I drank alcohol in the military underage.
Yeah.
You know, pretty standard.
As you do, yeah.
Yeah, same
Standard issue.
Smoking cigarettes. Yeah, standard issue. Exactly. And then I didn't use any kind of substances until I was 22. When that was the first time I tried weed, cannabis. I call it cannabis now. Cannabis is way better. I tried cannabis then, and it changed my world. I was super overweight, super unhealthy. I was an alcoholic. I was drinking half a bottle or 3/4 of a bottle of Jameson every day, and smoking cigarettes. And I smoked weed for the first time, and it just like opened my awareness to what I'm doing to my body.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
and it was very, very
And this
strong.
is what age? I keep asking on the age.
Yeah, 22. I was 22 when that happened.
So that's in line with my theory that we're not meant to explore these types of drugs at the ages that we're doing it.
Like 14 and 12.
Yeah.
That's not good for you.
Because I didn't. I kind of dabbled, like I did it maybe once or twice when I was 16 or something, and then I got scared, like I got really stoned one day, and it was like it affected me 2 days later, kind of thing, and I was just like, never again, I'm not smoking. And then I picked it back up, maybe at like 21 or 22, and I don't know, I just felt like that's what's not intended, but I think your experience with it kind of is similar to mine, where it now that you have this developed brain that is thinking one way, you're able to expand that knowledge by looking outside the box with these performance enhancing drugs.
Well, it's like you have a foundation to work from rather than to have your foundation built with the input of the drugs.
Yeah. And by if you make it to 21 or whatever without doing this stuff, well, I guess you've been drinking and stuff like that. It makes sense. But I also think that you have, let's face it, like, yeah, cannabis is a great drug and it can do a lot of things, but it's also pretty damaging to the motivation. And I think like when you're
working
a little bit more, when you're established and you've already had like some discipline in your life and things like that, and now you're looking for a break from that discipline. Or a way to unwind after work, after you've done like the work of like going through schooling or getting your first job, or you're getting your foot in the door at your first career. Now you can go home and unwind with this drug, and see the world that you've created so far in a different light, rather than trying to go to fucking high school stoned and failing tests. And this is basically a lot of friends that I grew up with, and that I just saw it in my friends, and I was like, no, I'm not doing any of that. I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do any of that shit.
Good.
Until like 21. And then I felt like by that point I had my shit together. At 21 I was just coming out of trade school and going into like getting my foot in the door at starting my career, because I didn't waste my time in college. And so I'm in my career now, and I'm learning my skill. I'm developing my craft and my skill. And now, I got my own apartment. I'm paying rent. I'm going to go home and smoke a joint and chill out after work, after using my brain all day in an office,
It's funny you say that, because during my trade school, I was using the GI Bill, which means that I was subject to being drug tested randomly at any time during school hours. And so I had intended, I was like, oh, I think after seeing my friend, I think I'm okay with, trying cannabis at some point. I was open to it, but, definitely not during this time during trade school. So I waited, graduated, got a job in the industry in my field, was working that job for like a month and a half, 2 months. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I've got a place to live. I've got a solid job with benefits. I've got, I'm done with school, not getting drug tested. So I smoked weed for the first time. And then like 2 weeks later, I was assembling a frame on a side-by-side out of the crate. And I was using an impact gun, and I got a fleck of metal in my eye. And so I had to go take a piss test at like Concentra or whatever right after that. And that was it. It was like, okay, the results came back. You failed your drug test for cannabis. So you can either go do this rehab thing, and it was like a 2-week thing, unpaid, and then you can come back and continue working here, or you can find a different place to work. And so I was
Wow.
so I quit. So
Wow, good for you. That takes some balls.
I was nervous. That became like one of the most difficult times, because I had a guy who I was working for out of his garage day to day. Like, I didn't have any obligations, no kid, no girlfriend, no dog, no cat, nothing. It was just me and my motorcycles, basically. So the guy I was working for, he was a sport bike guy, and they taught me how to ride. And I'm like, dude, he was good. I got really good. So we basically smoke bongs in the morning, go out and ride, and not high, obviously, but we'd go out and ride for half the day, and then come back and work on bikes, or vice versa, where we'd work on bikes in the morning, and then like late morning rolls around, we kind of did a lot of the stuff. We did all we can do for the day, working out of his garage on these. Dude, he had like a dozen or more bikes at any given time at his house of just customers. Like,
Where was this at?
this was in it's in Phoenix, on like
Okay.
Cave Creek area, Cave Creek and Bell.
Cool.
So yeah, but it was weird, because I was like living out of his pocket. Like, he would pay me daily for the work I did that day. And socially it was kind of weird, because like I liked him because he knew more than me, and he was really confident in his knowledge about motorcycle stuff, and I just want to learn.
Yeah.
But then like socially it was different, because he was kind of a weird dude. I think he didn't have a lot of friends, and he was cool with me, I was cool with him, so we hung out all the time. But I think he wanted me to stay there to be his friend rather than to work, and it kind of that seemed like it came through, because we ended up getting mountain bikes, and we, instead of working in the morning, we'd get high and go ride mountain bikes instead. And then he'd pay me like $20 at the end of the day or something. It was
What
like,
the fuck?
yeah, it was a weird bad time. It was a good learning curve for me. But
Yeah.
I met some good people through that, and then eventually, got had a buddy in the Army who said, "Hey, do you want to come do this easy job for $16 an hour with full benefits?" So I was like, yeah. So, and I'm still at that same company. So
I see.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because like, man, the motorcycle thing, it's like there's demand. Like having your own shop or whatever, it just seems like really hard to get up off the ground or whatever. You got your typical people that come to you and stuff like that. But it seems hard to like have like a really successful shop, especially if living like somewhere like here or whatever, where the population is lower or whatever. It's like, if you're living around more people, then you have more shops to compete with. Then your prices are different. Then you're living in a small town like this, where it's just like that one guy's got all the money or whatever, or, all the customers. Then there's less customers. I don't know, man. So I was wondering how you got out of, when you said, I think it was just today I learned that you worked on motorcycles, or went to school for it. At least that's what you mentioned today. And yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering how that went.
As far as working for that guy, one of the things we would do is we'd hang out all the time. We'd go out at night and like ride. We'd just go ride around the city, and then we would come across other people on sport bikes, and we'd come up with these like plans, these ways to get them to race. And then like we'd all pull into a gas station or whatever, and then hand out his card, his like business card. Like, yeah, we work on these things and whatever. And we'd go to track days and stuff like that. So there were different ways that we kind of like got people to got work, basically.
Okay.
So
Was that like all motorcycles or mostly sport bikes, or?
it was 80% sport bikes, and then cruisers here and there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was living in Colorado for a while, and there was a guy who was like a friend of a friend or whatever, had his own shop, and he had a couple people working for him that we were all friends with and stuff, and he would have like shop nights, man, what was it called? Filthy Friday. And you would bring your own motorcycle in, you could bring your own bike in and like kind of use the shop. It was kind of like low key, you know, like, hey, don't tell the insurance people kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you bring your own bike in and then you're hanging out with people that know how to, you know, we're all drinking beers and stuff like, oh, let's put those on your bike, you know, come over Filthy Friday, you know. It was really cool. They had like a good community, like motorcycle community in Denver area.
They did that every week.
They kind of tried to, like, as I came in, it was starting to fall off a little bit. There was some like turmoil, I guess, between some of the people, but like, it was really cool to go in there in that shop. And there was like, you know, we had the one dude, you know, Andrew, and he was a welder, you know, and he's like a fabricator. So he was doing like, you know, maybe like working on like a cafe racer that the shop had. And he was just doing like side work for the shop, you know, like to weld like subframes on like these cafe racers, but that's like all he did for the shop or something. And then another guy, you know, would come in and, you know, he'd be like the carb guy or something. So, yeah, I knew a couple people working at that shop, and we would hang out there sometimes and just go there and drink beers and hang out with motorcycles, man. And he was, man, his shop just like, he just could not be busy. Like, he was always busy. He had like rows and rows of bikes in there, all dirt bikes, and he worked on everything really. I got my tire work done there, stuff like that. And, yeah, that was really cool.
That's awesome.
There was also a branch off of from that was the so in the movie Dumb and Dumber, they ride on the mini bike to Aspen. Mm-hmm. So one of the dudes that ran Filthy Friday, this dude Andrew, he started a thing called the Dumb and Dumber ride. And so just, I think it's like at the end of summer, it'd be like the end of July, which starts to get sort of cold up in the mountains. We would go, and it had to be 200. You'd get your own bike and you dress up in any costume you'd want and like in some kind of theme, and under 200 cc's. And we would meet, and I forget like where at exactly. It was like you'd meet at the bottom of this mountain and you would climb Independence Pass, which is like a pretty gnarly pass. Like, we're talking like crazy switchbacks back and forth and stuff, and it's so beautiful out there. And like so we'd all show up in different costumes and stuff and
on
like ride these tiny bikes and go up the thing, and there's like traffic like behind us, like just stuck, like, and we're like, you know, and like these things are carbureted and they're not running well as we go higher and higher in elevation.
Yeah.
And so we would ride to the top and take a bunch of pictures and shit, and like I'm all decked out in that neon orange like top hat suit that like
no way you got the one that you got.
Yeah. And I borrowed a friend's scooter. It was a 110cc scooter, and I had my friend Goldie on the back.
That's rude.
What's that?
That's all just rude.
Oh my god, it was great. And then I'd film the whole thing. I'd film it on GoPro and the whole thing, and I'd edit it.
Is this on YouTube?
Yeah, I got I got 2 years worth.
What do you search?
You can search Broken Fix Pictures, and you'll see my channel, and then that video is on there.
What's it called?
Broken Fix, one word. Pictures. There you go, and then go to that channel, and then hit mute as soon as you go on it, because it's gonna start playing. Oh, okay, good. It didn't. And then playlists. And then where's it? Motorcycle videos. Well, yeah, not like that particular one. Just, you want to see all the ones in that playlist of motorcycle videos, yeah. And Dumb and Dumber Ride 2020.
No way. Oh, my goodness.
And then I did a lot of filming and editing in Colorado there. And then this song, you know this song. This is the Mary Mo. You could let the intro play, because you'll give you a sense of like what it was like. That's just like a real quick. We're watching a clip from Dumb and Dumber in the beginning where they decide to jump on
and totally redeem yourself.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, those are tiny bikes.
Yeah, I think it's like a DS50.
There's a bunch of you guys there.
Oh yeah, we had a nice little crew. I'm on a TTR 125.
Yeah,
that's an old, a lot of 70s, old small 70s bikes.
That's cool.
People are breaking down on the side. We got like a support vehicle.
Oh, nice! You did a whole thing. How
there you go.
What was the mileage like? Was it more than like 50 miles, 100 miles?
No, nothing too crazy. I don't know what that pass is. Man, I don't know, maybe 5 miles. I don't know.
How
It's
long
hard
did
to
it take
say.
you to get up to Aspen?
We can go all the way to Aspen. This is Independence Pass, which is sort
Okay.
of like on the way to, I guess it's on the way to Aspen or something, but it was just like this little mountain pass that we sort of call like the Dumb and Dumber ride kind of thing. And then we would spend, there was like a hot springs down at the base there, and we'd spend the weekend there at the hot springs and get a cabin. And yeah, dude, we lived it up, man.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And
That looks like a lot of fun.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
We did this one in when I was in the military. I was in like near Savannah, Georgia, and so I had some guys that were in my platoon or the other platoon that lived in South Carolina or North Carolina or Virginia, and so sometimes we'd go on these trips. And some guys lived in Florida, so we kind of cruised all around that area over the few years that I was there. And one time, me and two of these other guys went up to the Tail of the Dragon.
Yeah, I've ridden that.
Dude,
I got a funny story about that, but yeah, go on.
we went up and we got, I don't even know if we made it there, but we made it so close to there, and we did GoPro, and it was like, it was awesome. I got it on video, and it was freaking sweet. But
Yeah, the Tail of the Dragon, it's like, I don't know how many miles it is, but it's like, I don't know,
111 turns.
111 hairpin turns or something within like 8 miles or something.
Yeah, something crazy.
Something silly.
Yeah, that was just YouTube video. These guys on Gold Wings, just
Oh,
mobbing
I've seen
through there,
that,
just
dude.
scraping
Scraping
sparks.
bags. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
throwing
my
sparks
God.
up.
Yeah, that's
cool.
nuts. I was when I got after my first divorce, I started dating this chick, and she was sort of like the only chick I've ever dated with money. And she was sort of taking like a sabbatical and like had money and stuff, and she was like,
Was she divorced?
no, she'd never been married.
That's
or
not how
nothing.
she got her money.
No. She was like a CEO, or not CEO, but she was like in corporate. I think she was like working for Ralph Lauren in like the corporate side or whatever. And so I met her in this weird sabbatical time, some weird thing where she's dating poor guys. And I mean, I'm not poor, but if you compare to her level. But anyway, she was like, she had a house in North Carolina, and she was back in Jersey, and like that's when we kind of met. And but she was like, "Yo, let me fly you out to North Carolina, and I want to show you like what it's like here and this and that." And I was like, "Dude, I'd never had anybody buy me a plane ticket before. Sure, I'll come out to North Carolina." So we go to North Carolina, and I show up, and she put together this like laminated like book, like, here's everything we're gonna do today, this week or whatever. I was there for like 4 days or something, and
a
like
professional itinerary.
yeah, it was like you had a cover sheet and everything with like. Like
Run.
I think it was Durham.
Get out.
Yeah, dude. She was very, as they say in the astrological world, she was very Virgo. But anyway, she opens it up.
What
It's
does
like
that mean?
Virgo.
Yeah.
Virgo's like what's it called? Like really tight, put together, like OCD sort of.
Like type A?
Yeah. Definitely
Okay.
like type A, but definitely like a little bit more obsessive about like things and having order and like having things organized.
Organization.
Yeah. So like somebody who would organize a 4-day trip, like, and put a PowerPoint presentation together to show you everything. And then anyway, so she's like, and then because she told me, she was like, bring your motorcycle helmet. And I was like, all right. And I was like, maybe she has a motorcycle. I don't know. And I get there, and she's like, and then like the last sheet, she's like, and so I rented this bike, this motorcycle, and we're gonna ride the Tail of the Dragon together. You can ride me on the back. And I was like,
what kind of bike was it?
so she rented a Ducati Multistrada, which is the ADV bike.
Okay. Yeah.
Now you have to understand, but you have to understand that like for her, like, all right, so I had been riding motorcycles probably 8 years at this point on the road.
Yeah.
I've ridden dirt like most of my life, but I've ridden, but only on a Triumph bobber, like lowrider,
That
like
was your
cruiser.
experience?
That's all I've ridden in for 8 years.
Okay.
I've ridden this chopped up cruiser, and now she wants to ride 2-up on the Tail of the Dragon with a Ducati Multistrada, which I've never like.
Probably never heard of at that point.
No, yeah, I've never heard of that bike. Yeah, I mean, I know Ducati, of course, but
Yeah.
like I didn't know that they had an adventure bike and like what it called, and I was just like assuming that it was like big money. I
What
mean,
year
it's like
was this?
I want to say it's like 2014, 2015,
Okay.
something
I didn't
like
know
that.
they had the Multistrada back then.
Yeah, and so like she's like, yeah, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, you have to picture like the kind of riding gear that I'm riding is like I got like riding shoes, like sneakers, and like I got an open face bobber helmet, like a 3/4 helmet, open face helmet with some glasses on, and now I'm gonna ride this Ducati with her on the back. I've never ridden this bike before, and we're gonna ride this Hill of the Dragon, and I'm riding 2-Up. And like, yeah, so like I had to just jump on this bike, and then like the place where she rented it from or whatever was like up this mountain road, like this gravel road. I had to ride on this gravel road with her on the back down
some rental bike,
and it was basically just some dude that like had a garage and just bought a bunch of bikes and was just renting bikes, and it wasn't like a fucking official ass.
Like a place.
Yeah, this guy was like, I got a bunch of motorcycles and I'm going to rent them out to like these people who want to come down here and do the tail dragging and stuff.
Was there like an insurance option? Like, if I crash the bike, then I don't have to pay for the whole thing.
Well, as soon as I got there, I was like, take these freaking saddlebags off right now, because I've never ridden anything with a saddlebag on the sides, and I know I'm going to bump that or I'm going to scratch that, and it looks like it's really expensive.
They were like hard bags.
Yeah, they were hard. Yeah, they were hard bags and everything. So we took all that off. I think maybe we kept one or the top box in the back or something like that, so that she can put her stuff in there. But basically it was just like, and then the other thing was, it wasn't like a 20-minute ride down the highway to do the Trail of the Dragon. It was like, okay, let's get on like this gravel road, and then we're going to go on these crazy twisty roads, and then you're at the Tail of the Dragon. It was like, I never got a chance to like get familiar with the bike at all before I was riding the Tail of the Dragon and doing 156 turns in fucking 8 miles or whatever the fuck.
It sounds like you had plenty of time to warm up on the way there.
I mean, dude, oh my God. So yeah, it was pretty nerve wracking, and I somehow pulled it out of my ass. And no, I mean, I don't know, man. I guess I'm a capable guy, and she knew I was capable of doing that. Like she rented the thing. She put her credit card on the line. You know what I mean? But this is the kind of girl that would like see the potential in you, and like she said that once, where she was like, man, like, you could just ride me on the back of the motorcycle. Or like, I think like, would you possibly like go to flight school if I paid for it? Like that way you could fly me in planes everywhere. Like it was like, I was like,
did she say that?
Yeah, she said that. Like
whoa.
She was like talking about my genes all the time. Like my genetic makeup and stuff. Like, you have really good genes. Like, have you ever thought about having kids? And like all this stuff. Like I was being farmed basically. It was kind of, it was flattering coming out of my marriage or whatever.
I'm sure it felt great at the time.
It was very flattering, but I didn't realize that I was like, I don't know.
So when did she take your kidney?
Man meat. What's that?
When did she take your kidney?
Oh my God, she might as well have. But no, I mean, yeah, we dated for a while, but I realized that like she had a big temper, and it was basically the universe was giving me another woman, just like the last one that I had finally not gotten rid of, but finally like separated from, and then the universe gives you the same thing again, and they say,
another girl bad for my health.
Yeah, and she was like, okay, did you learn your lesson on, and it's like, no, I definitely learned my lesson on the last one. I don't need the same thing, and that's kind of what you do. You kind of learn how to spot that stuff a little sooner, a little quicker. And you're like, oh yeah, we're arguing right now, like about nothing, about like the bill.
We've known each other like
it was like
2 months.
She would have all this money, and then she would go and she was like, oh, I'm going to take you out to dinner tonight. And we go to dinner, and then she'd, like, I don't know, like, she was like, pick the place. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, it's really cold outside. We met up in, I forget, like Connecticut or something. It was like super cold. And she was like, pick the place and I'll get dressed. And I was like, okay, cool. And I was like, you know what, man, it's really cold outside. Why don't we just eat at the place, like at the bottom of this hotel that we're in? We're like a high-rise hotel. I was like, why don't we just eat at the place at the bottom? And she's like, you know what, that makes sense. That way we don't have to walk anywhere. And it's like it was like crazy windy. We go down and we like sit down, we get seated. It's like a nice place. Looked kind of fancy. And we start looking at the menu, and she's looking at the menu, and she's like, oh my God, like the prices are outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, well, I mean, I guess they are kind of high. And she was like, well, did you want to go to the most expensive place? Because I said I was buying dinner tonight. And I was like, no, I just chose this place because we didn't want to walk in the cold. And she was like, well, this place is too expensive. We have to leave. And it was just like things like that, where it was just like, I'm not talking about red flags, but like, red and orange striped flags, the ones that are supposed to be really, and maybe even like just a little bit of like some Technicolor or some kind of,
some kind of bright warning.
Yes, dude. Black light, reactive.
It's neon colored flags.
Yeah. There was this day glow fucking flags here, and and I don't think the relationship survived that night, actually. So
I'm gonna grab some water.
yeah, let's do that.
That was the end of that relationship.
Pretty much, yeah. I think we did it. Yeah, no, it was like goodbye.
So that was the end of that relationship.
Yeah, man. We found another place to eat, and we sat down, and
Where'd you go to eat?
we ended up at like this Irish pub or something.
Nice.
And we sat down, and I was like, "Is this place okay?" You know, and like,
Did she get pissed?
well, it was so.
What's that supposed to mean?
Oh my God! Well, it was.
Sorry.
There was definitely some animosity there because.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a cell phone until I was 34. Like I just refused to get one.
Say what?
Yeah, I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't need a cell phone. Like I was married to my first wife, and she was with me for like 12 years. At some point, I was just like, dude, cell phones, like they drop out calls all the time. I'm gonna wait until that technology gets better. And at some point, I like bought my own house, and I own a house now, and I couldn't afford cable internet. I needed DSL internet, so I needed a home line. So there was no reason to have a cell phone there. And then if I was on the road or anything, I was with my wife, who needed to be by my side constantly because she didn't trust me at all. So I used her cell phone if we ever broke down. I've broken down on the side of the road and had to knock on people's doors, like, "Can I use your phone?" And they're like, "What's wrong with your phone?" I'm like, "I don't have a phone." I'm like, "I ain't letting that guy use my phone. You don't have a phone."
Who doesn't have a phone?
Who
They must
doesn't
be
have a use of
crazy.
phone? Dude, yeah.
Don't let
so
them in your house.
I basically didn't have a cell phone until I got divorced. I was like, single man needs a cell phone, you know? So I got a cell phone. So
What year was that?
this? Is 2014.
Unbelievable.
My first cell phone was an iPhone 5.
Awesome.
I waited until the technology got good. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like iPhone 5, they got it figured out by now.
Yeah.
They're not dropping calls no more.
No.
So yeah. So anyway, I'm not very quick. So when we're looking for a new restaurant, right? Because this place is too fancy. I'm not like quick with the phone to pull it out and start looking at shit right away. You know, it's not in my. I think people have like learned that they've learned that process of like going through the flip phones and all that other shit where there's just like, oh, I'm gonna look up another place right now, real quick, right now, and it's not in my mind. So it's like when she wanted to leave the expensive place, we like leave and we're walking in the cold now. She's like, well, I guess I'll look up another place because you're not. And I was like, you like never look up anything. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't know. The cell phone thing, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, then she just found some other place. So she's just pissed like all the way into the next restaurant. And then like we sat down and then like, she said something about like, I guess I'm paying for this dinner then. And I was like, dude, do not pay for dinner. Like
Well, at the beginning of this, you told me that she said she would take you out to dinner.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, it's weird. Like she would have this money and then she would take me and then even like when she flew me to North Carolina, she was like, okay, well, like, let me know when you get the money for that flight. And I was like, oh, you said you were going to fly me out. And she's like, yeah, but like, just pay me back whenever. And I was like, oh.
That's not, no, I don't think so.
And like, I got my own money. Like, it's just, like, I own my own house at this point. Like, I'm all right. And I don't need a woman to buy me things. But like, when you say, hey, I'm going to fly you out to you just assume, And I was just like, okay, I'll PayPal you the fucking money. Like,
I don't need no man to buy me things.
it was definitely like this back and forth. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, I don't need no man, but like at the same time, like it would be like to win you over. And then I guess she started thinking like, is she using me for the money? And I was like, no, I was just, to be honest, I had been married to a woman who was in and out of jobs all the time. I was carrying both of us. I was carrying the mortgage. I was paying for our food. Like I was part of the household, like, doing everything in the household stuff, I was remodeling
Yeah.
each room in the house on my own dime. And then when that woman moved out, I was like, thank God, like, you know, like I don't need anybody else's money. So it was kind of nice to date somebody who wanted to treat me, you know, like as a man that's supposed to buy everything and all that bullshit.
Yeah,
so it was just, it's really nice.
It's like a relief.
So it was like, here's the polar opposite of what you were dating, but then also the same temperament.
Yeah.
You know, like crazy Irish girls.
It's like you have a sugar mama, but that sugar's got a little bit of like heroin or something mixed into it. So it's like, oh, poison.
I really do think that she was trying to have a baby with me and then like leave kind of thing. I think this was her last ditch effort to get a baby for my genes and then you know,
who's using who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was definitely a piece of meat to that woman, I feel like. But anyhow, yeah. So, yeah, and pretty much we fought like all the way through the restaurant and then all the way back. And by the end, when we got back to the hotel or whatever, she was just like, you can fucking leave in the morning or whatever. It's like, I'm gone in the morning. And I slept on the couch. And it was like a one-room studio fucking thing. And I slept on the couch. And I woke up, didn't say a word, walked down to the parking lot, parking garage and got in the truck and like left at like 6 a.m. and had to drive back to Jersey from Connecticut at 6 a.m. And it was just like, I remember pulling out and the song came on. It was like Master of Puppets came on.
Whoa.
And it was like, dun, dun, dun. And I was like, man, that is another chapter fucking done with this thing. You know, like just onward and upward, baby. You know,
how long had you known her at that point?
I knew her when I was younger, like in like 16, 17. And then, you know, like we kind of reunited through Facebook or something after I got divorced kind of thing. It was like, hey, how are you doing? Let's catch up. And then one thing led to another, you know.
Catch up in quotes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it was a couple months. And then onward and upward, man. Anywhere the wind blows.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
Entering the dating world in that one.
Yeah, stuff's crazy. Relationships are weird.
Yeah, you know, there are better words than weird, but I agree. It's
it's a very neutral word.
You know, Joe Rogan says weird too much.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed.
I
noticed it way too much. You know, it's weird.
I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. They're like these neutral words that are
they don't mean anything.
They don't designate it as anything. It's like I was telling them that Jim Carrey did it first in Liar Liar, where he's going up the elevator and it was Bruce Almighty, I think, when he's trying to get a new job.
Okay. I've never seen it. Go on.
Oh man, hold on. It was Fun with Dick and Jane.
Oh my God! Every Jim Carrey movie you've listed so far. You sure it's not Dumb and Dumber?
I'm sure it's not Dumb and Dumber.
The Mask.
No, it's not The Mask. No, but so anyway, he gets into this elevator and he's trying to get this job, and then this other guy is in the elevator with him, and he's like, "Hey, did you hear what happened to this guy?" And then Jim Carrey's like, "Oh yeah, that's wild." Because he had no idea what happened to that guy, but he had to say something. Okay. And it's like wild. Even wild is a neutral word in that sense. Oh, interesting, wild.
I was going to
weird.
say interesting is one of the ones that's kind of my pet peeve when say something like interesting, and you're like, oh my God, you could say any other. Did you ever see that movie? There's a movie, Captain Awesome.
No.
Something like that. Captain Awesome.
Captain America.
No, it's like. It's this dude that basically he brings all of his kids into the woods to live off the land, basically, and he's raising these kids just like through books and everything, and they're super smart and they're sharp as a tack, you know, and all this stuff. And now he's like got to go to his wife dies, the mother dies, and they got to go to this funeral or whatever and meet the in-laws and like go to the real world, you know, come out of the forest, and all these kids are like. Used to like the oldest one just like kills a deer with his bare hands, like with a knife, and starts skinning it like in the beginning scene, you know.
Does he lure the deer?
No, well, they were tracking it, you know, and all that.
How does he get that close to the deer?
Dude, I don't know. It was a movie, but anyhow,
was it in the movie?
Yeah, it was in the movie.
What happened? Did he sneak up on the deer?
Dog just jumped out the bushes and snatched up that deer and fucking slit its throat. That's like amazing. Fucking with piano wire. But anyway, the point.
Piano wire.
I swoop in like a hawk with piano wire.
I would wait in a tree.
But the point of the story is that he's driving a bus, and this is how he gets his kids around. And they're like, and he's like, hey, you, such and such, recite me the reasons why we got, you know, like he goes through like all these little like mental drills or whatever and stuff like that. And one of the things was, it's like, how's that book you're reading so far? And the girl's like, it's interesting. And he's like, hey, you know, like, Sandy, tell her what you think about interesting. Interesting is not a word. It is a blank word that is you know, like there's just like, it's real quick. But basically, it was the same thing. It was like, interesting is not a word or whatever. And
it's like a transition.
Yeah. It doesn't have any meaning and it has no insight at all. Like, I asked you about the book. Tell me about the book, you know. And she explains the book, and the book's pretty crazy. It's about like this child molester guy or whatever. And like, you learn to have like this sympathy for this child molester in the book.
That's interesting.
And he's got like his 12-year-old girl reading this book or whatever. And she's like really, you know, conflicted about this because she has this sympathy for this guy who can't control himself and all this stuff. I don't know. It's pretty like intense. It's an intense movie, dude.
What's it called? Captain Awesome?
I think it's Captain Awesome.
That's a weird name for a movie like that.
Do you know Viggo Mortensen?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
He's in it?
Yeah.
Oh.
So you know it's awesome.
He's a good actor.
He's a great actor.
Yeah, man.
So, all right, look, I'm not a big fan of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, how dare you. You're a Harry Potter guy, aren't you?
No, hold on. Here's the deal. I'm not a big fan of Lord of the Rings because it's just a little long and drawn out. I don't like big sagas like that, but my brother-in-law lent me the Lord of the Rings box set. And in those DVDs was the making of the Lord of the Rings. And it's literally like 7 hours of making of the Lord of the Rings. Have you ever watched that?
Yeah.
Okay. When I got done watching the making of the Lord of the Rings, I no longer like the movie anymore. The making of the movie is such a bigger tale. Like Peter Jackson and all the people that he got to make the art for that, and the sword maker and the people who train the horses and all that stuff. And when you watch that movie, you fall in love with Viggo as a person. Yeah. It's just like, oh my God, this guy is like the greatest dude ever. Yeah. Not only is he like fucking amazing looking dude, you know, he's the guy that you want to be in some ways, but he's like got like this real gentle heart. He basically, well, like one of the horse trainers for that movie, like trained all of these horses and was like choreographing all these stunts for these horses and all this stuff. And then she kind of fell in love with these horses, you know, and now she has to say goodbye to like her favorite horse or whatever that she'd worked on the set. You know, I don't know how long it took to make that movie. I forget. It was like many years. She's like with this horse, and now she has to say goodbye to it. And Viggo bought that horse for her. It was like,
oh, whoa.
You know, it was just like stuff like that. And she just was like, you know, he's a beautiful man, you know, like through and through, just a beautiful man. And I was like, dude, there's parts in that fucking making of documentary that will make me tear up and cry. It's just like so much devotion to the art.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it takes a lot.
Oh my God,
it takes a lot. So like I was in theater in high school, and one of the things that we had to do was build sets for the productions. Like, that's awesome. For the theater productions we'd do. And it's like, at the time, that was my least favorite thing. I don't know what I wanted to do, but it wasn't that. Yeah. I know I wanted to act. I didn't want to sing. I just wanted to be an actor. And
nice.
And I remember after kind of going away from the set building stuff, I would watch what they were doing, and then I would see start to finish over several weeks or even a semester long of building these sets, how much effort it took, and how much like these high school kids would stay there after school for 2-3 hours working on these sets. And it was just like, first of all, what's wrong with you? Don't you have something else you want to do in your life? But that was obviously my
well, you know,
my youth speaking.
No, I get it.
It's wild.
It's
interesting. It's weird.
You know what's funny? I picked up on that, dude. I was like, he used all three on me. Yeah, it is interesting. You're right. It is quite the interesting thing when you think about it that way.
It sparks my interest.
Yes, it piques.
Piques my interest.
Piqueue.
Oh,
peaks.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I always think PEA.
Everybody does.
KS.
I know. I was showing off.
There's also PEEKS, which is like to look through.
Yeah.
And then
now you're just going through the dictionary.
No. Aardvark.
Yeah, but
set building and production. What it took to make that movie is just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is an amazing feat, and the fact that they would go back and make the next one, like I think they made them back to back. I think the first two or something they made back to back, and then the third one they took a break, I think, or something in between. It's just like imagine living in New Zealand or whatever for that long amount of time, and
the makeup for like the orcs and the urukai and the goblins and the feet on the hobbits. They had to do these fake feet and the ears. Like
and what about the forced perspective? It was interesting
for the hobbits.
Yeah, forced perspective, as in like you're using regular size actors, but you need to make them look smaller, so you shoot them like so they're farther back in the set, and they have smaller chairs, and like it's all scaled by like a mathematical proportion. Yeah. And when you shoot it a certain way, they look small. That is fucking genius. Yeah. And that's what's crazy about all of that. And Peter Jackson, as like an artist himself and everything like that, just studied all of these old filmmaking techniques and was like super enthralled with like how that's done, and didn't want to do all this special effect bullshit, and wanted to do it in these old photography tricks, and a lot of that stuff is just like, man, how they put that together, and like
it's effective.
It kept a lot of people employed, those movies. Yeah. I'll tell you that, man. I just the fact that they wanted real swords to be built by a blacksmith. They wanted the chainmail of the suits to be made in a certain way so it wasn't too heavy on the actors. So they were made out of like plastic for these parts and metal in those parts, and it's just everything down to like the very fine little nitty gritty details of like, even just like you're paying an artist in order to come up with a conceptual design of each character, and all he is doing is just making pencil drawings. But then he gives that to another guy who's going to now sculpt those pencil drawings into something out of clay. And then that guy is going to take that clay and that thing and see the 3D element of it, and now make like the actual costume out of that, or make molds to make those masks.
And they all need full-time pay.
Yeah, man. And it's all like union work, right? Like,
is it?
Like, yeah, because when you work on films and stuff, it's got to be union. Like,
oh, okay. I was wondering, like, I
think it's Screen Actors Guild, like the SAG or something. I don't know. It's something like that.
Who funds that stuff? Like Lord of the Rings. Who paid for all of that to have? Who paid all those people during that time before the movies came out and made a ton of money?
I mean, I don't know about much about filmmaking, but I definitely think it's like these rich producers who just have the extra money that they've made on other movies, and then they take that chunk, and then they all put their money together, and then say, okay, well, like now they have a say in it. It's almost like a like a board of directors kind of thing and stuff. So for somebody to give
like the same way they do books, like, okay, yeah, this your pitch sounds good, so we're gonna pay you this much. This is your deadline, and then.
Like an advance,
yeah, something like that. I know they do that with book writing.
Yeah, you get an advance, but you would say, okay, you have this production company. Well, that was the thing too, because I feel like that's very similar to the way that George Lucas started making Star Wars. Is that like the people that he had making that movie, they were just all people, and then by the end of the movie, he has his own production company. Like, these people know how to do it now. They figured it out. There's all this R&D, and it's done. And now the second movie is going to be better than the first. Not that, I don't want to get all involved with the Star Wars people. Okay, I don't want the Star Wars people calling me in the middle of the night and telling me I'm an asshole for saying the second one's better than the first.
Tell the Star Wars people how it is. Tell them how it is. We all know.
But what I'm saying is that they figured out their process, and then now they're a company. And I think that's THX 1138 or whatever, like he just did all of this, and now it's a company. And that's the same thing with like the Lord of the Rings. I forget the company's name, but it had something to do with New Zealand. And that was like, now they're a production company because they've figured this all out. And now it's like, hey, who else is going to make these movies? Us, and now it's like, it's nuts.
What a project.
I love talking about that. It's like,
for not liking Lord of the Rings very much, you sure know a lot about it.
I watched all of them. Yeah. I even watched the Hobbits and stuff like that. It's just like, at some point, I think for me, the action world, the action movies and stuff like that, and not that it's an action movie, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, it kind of is in line with that, where I started to like, as I matured, I kind of started to like movies that had more dialogue and less like bang bang shoot 'em up action, fight scenes and all this stuff. So I can appreciate the movie for the art that it is and the story, and obviously it's based on like an incredible like fucking genius who wrote the fucking book.
Did you read any of the books?
No, of course not.
Do you read much?
I do.
You do? What do you read? What kind of stuff?
Right now, I started kind of reading a little later in life. So when I started to read, I liked biographies of like famous people and stuff like that. So I would like read like, the biography like of Tony Hawk or the biography of Marilyn Manson. And even if I don't even like Marilyn Manson's. I didn't even like Marilyn Manson's music. Yeah. And
I'm thinking. Never mind. I'm thinking of a different Manson. Continue.
Oh yeah, Charlie Manson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marilyn Manson, the musician. But like I don't know. I had like a little infatuation with not famous people really, but like people who've done something great.
Yeah.
Like Tony Hawk. There was Matt Hoffman book. I read that.
Yeah.
I would just read about that. I kind of got started in that. There's a book called it's written by Michael Azerald, and I can't believe I remember that name. But he wrote a book called My Band Could Be Your Life.
I couldn't even remember helium.
I know. And but he wrote a book called My Band Could Be Your Life, and it was like this thick book, but it had each couple chapters he would he was a journalist writer. So he would go and hang out with all these old punk rock bands that were like very influential throughout the 70s and 80s in the birth of punk rock. So he'd have a whole section about Black Flag, a whole section about Minor Threat, all these different things, and then it kind of like evolved from punk rock and into like the no wave scene and like the new wave scene and all these other things like Butthole Surfers and all these bands. And like I really liked learning about how bands got started. I was like in 2 or 3 bands at that point now, and I really liked that whole like folklore of like how things get started. It's like, we were friends in high school and we started jamming and then we did this and that, and like I don't know, it's just interesting to me. So that's what got me into reading. And then after that it was like, I want to read about musicians, so I would read like Keith Richards' book was really like, that was a big thick fucker, man. That guy's lived forever.
You like the Chili Peppers?
I do.
So Flea wrote a book called Acid for the Children, and I listened to it on audio.
Like it's a book though, like a novel?
No, it's the story of his partially
childhood?
of his life, and how he came to the Red Hot Chili Peppers and how the band got formulated, and it's kind of about his life, but that's very much a part of it. So you hear a lot of inside stuff about him and Anthony Kiedis, and then John Frusciante and all those guys. So he reads the audiobook himself, which is incredible.
That's
because
great.
His voice is just like, he has such emotion coming through his voice. I like so many times in that book that I cried.
Wow.
Listening to this guy talk about his life.
And when did he write?
He wrote within the last 3 years.
Oh, I'm on board. Yeah, I gotta get that. I have yet to get into the world of audiobooks. I like a paper fucking book.
Oh man,
I like sitting in a hammock and feeling the pages. But the audio thing, especially what you're telling me there, where like you can really gather the emotion from the person's voice or whatever, especially the person telling the story.
Yeah, if they're the ones that wrote it, that's when it's good. When you listen to like these voice actors do it, it can be good, but it's more that would
throw me off.
It's like detached. You're kind of detached from it. I think if you're gonna read a book and it's not the guy who wrote it reading it to you,
that's weird.
Then you should do it yourself and read the actual paper book.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
There's such a detachment with somebody else.
I read the Anthony Kiedis book, Scar Tissue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was really good. And but I think I also I really liked, I guess because I grew up with around a lot of people that were into drugs and stuff, and one of my best friends who's very similar to Flea. You can just imagine Flea. I kind of like grew up being good friends with Flea. That just level of excitement and like enthusiasm and sheer energy. He got into harder drugs and was like, so we had an on and again, off again. I would go get married. He would go into drugs. He would get clean because of prison. He'd come out of prison. I would get divorced. We'd hang out again. We'd start a band, and like that. And so on. And the saga continues kind of thing. But, I think I had some kind of infatuation with reading about drug, sex, and rock and roll too. It was just all like a lot of like crazy drama and stuff like that. And I guess because I lived around it so much and I didn't live it myself because I didn't want to be around it, maybe it was my way of like living it out, like through other people or reading other people's stories through it and stuff. And so anyhow, that Scar Tissue book had a lot to do with like intravenous drugs, obviously. And just the,
you say obviously because the phrase scar tissue is in reference to Like the point where you would inject yourself with a heroin needle?
You know,
Is that what that's from?
I would assume so.
Okay.
But I don't necessarily, I don't think that Anthony Kiedis is one to write too many lyrics about. He has a lot of nonsense lyrics that's more poetic than it is like a lot about making sense. But I do assume that that song, Scar Tissue, being on the album Californication, of them reuniting with John Frusciante, who had been out on drugs for a really long time. That was a really monumental album for them to come back in their second wave of their career because of John Frusciante's amazing guitar playing and also getting clean and sober. So I think that, I think you're right to assume that there has a lot to do with the word, that term scar tissue, of like, kind of coming back out and healed and going forward with your next,
Not
endeavor.
only with the drugs, but relationally between the guys.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, I would assume that that's definitely the case. Yeah.
Do you think that they play better music because they did drugs?
I do believe in the powers of drugs. I do think that what hurts us also helps us, and then there's it's a very Icarus kind of thing, like you're gonna fly too close to that sun just to be as high as you possibly can be, and you're gonna melt those wings.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's some kind of like weird there's some weird thing about living that lifestyle. I think it's the lifestyle too, especially that LA scene, that California weirdness there and all that stuff, and them just being who they are as individuals. But as far as like drugs and I mean, I don't know, like, was it Bill Hicks said it? I don't know, if you hate drugs and you think drugs should be illegal or whatever, then just throw out every.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, throw out all your albums.
Carlin. Is it George Carlin or Bill Hicks? But throw out all your albums because they were all made on like performance enhancing drugs.
Real fucking high on drugs.
Yes,
that's the punchline.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, that's Bill Hicks then. Yeah.
Okay.
That voice was. I
know all those musicians that made all that music that has changed and shaped your life over the years. Real fucking high on drugs.
Yeah, dude.
That's it's interesting, but a lot of people don't want to admit that.
Well, I think that a lot of people don't want to admit it because it's not like there's no one saying that you, in order to become a great person or a great musician or artist or anything like that, you have to go out, step one, get some drugs.
No, that's not what I mean.
But no, I know you're not saying that, but what I'm saying is I think that no one's really going to say it because it shouldn't be said, because it comes more from the lifestyle of that world.
That's the social stigma, is that it shouldn't be said. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you're gonna listen to that music and you're gonna allow that music to shape and change your life, but then deny part of what created that music, that's kind of I don't like that.
No, not at all. Well, I mean, could you just imagine if Dark Side of the Moon was written on beer? Right?
It would.
Like, how would you, like, oh man, I just drank a 30-pack. I'm going to write this next song.
Time to write. No, that's not that kind of music.
No, dude.
So what was it from? Is it, or those Pink Floyd?
Yeah.
And those guys are into what, heroin?
You don't know much about Pink Floyd?
I don't know very much at all about Pink Floyd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know
a couple
that,
of the songs.
All right, but do you know like just the story or just the legend of Dark Side of the Moon?
No idea.
Okay. So like some would say that Dark Side of the Moon is like the greatest one of the greatest accomplishments in music ever.
Why?
Just I think it has a lot to do with having a concept album, like these concept albums that have all these songs that are all kind of one piece of music, but it's just like generally accepted as like this album start to finish that you can't, like, yeah, there are some standout songs in that, but this song is just, it's not a song. It's like you're reading one chapter out of a book. It needs to be consumed from start to finish.
Okay.
It is a piece of art through and through. It's like not only a writing accomplishment, but also a recording accomplishment. Like the things that are done in that were like groundbreaking at the time. All this stuff. I've watched like a behind the music making of Dark Side of the Moon, and I kind of knew its greatness before that, but I don't know, it just always struck me as like a great album. And it's kind of like well known. It's like it's the Indiana Jones or the Back to the Future or the Star Wars of I guess you could say psychedelic rock. Okay. So like Pink Floyd kind of started, and then no, this is more of an acid thing. This is LSD world, not so much heroin. It probably happened later on as they got to be better musicians that had more money and stuff. I wouldn't deny that at all. I don't know much about the heroin use, but this is definitely more of a psychedelic world. They kind of started as like a jam band that played to videos on the projector behind them and stuff. They would play to like whatever. They would jam to like whatever was being projected on the TV, or they would have overhead projectors with water and like food coloring and stuff, and like drops of water and stuff like that. And they would play to the feel of all that stuff.
Interesting.
And I don't know if you've heard of like the folklore of the Dark Side of Oz.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know about that.
Like the sinking of, for the audience out there that doesn't know, the sinking of the Dark Side of the Moon to the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And I've watched it.
Have you done that? You've watched them synced up?
I've watched it synced up once, because you're supposed to like wait until like the third line roar and hit play and all this stuff. And I watched it synced up, like sync it, go. And it was pretty amazing.
So it looks like it's supposed to be a soundtrack to the film?
Like, yeah.
How intricate does it?
Down to like lyrics, like the lunatic is on the grass, and it's the scarecrow like scene where like he's just becoming, awake or whatever, and he's like standing on this grassy field and stuff, and like there's all these things, and also there's changes in the song. Like, I don't know if you remember that one song. It starts, I think it's Time, and it starts with all the clocks like bing, all these noises just kick right away. Well, like that, when that part of she lands and she opens the door and it's all color, and she sees the yellow brick road and all the like the crazy world or whatever. As soon as she opens that door, like that comes on, like all those clocks and everything, and it goes to. So I had a bootleg version that was the movie already synced to the music, so you could just hit play it and watch it. And I'd watch it multiple times, and it's kind of crazy because it's like the first time around, because it repeats. Like the movie is longer than the album, so you're watching it and you see all these cues and these signs and these like little things that like it's just like scenes in the movie would change as the next song would come on.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Like it was really.
I didn't mean anything derogatory by saying interesting.
Oh my God, we can't use that word anymore.
No,
it's like indubitably. Anyway, yes.
But that
fascinating.
That really is interesting.
It is. And then what would happen is they would sync up, but then the music would loop, and then you would go back to
the beginning of that album.
The beginning would play again, and it would still line up
partway through the movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
And there's like
how many times does the album play throughout the movie?
I want to say it's like 2, but I could be wrong. It could be 1.5. I forget.
Okay.
But it ends on the end.
Oh, really? Starts again then. So.
And I don't know, man, like, and I hated having the doctored version or whatever, but like, man, there's the saxophone part towards the end, and it's in Money. Ding, 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 ding. And that's when like all the munchkins are coming out, ding, 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 and they all get on the thing. And when it kicks in though, like, Money is written 5/4, ding, 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 whatever that timing is, and then it kicks into a 4/4 beat, bam, 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 and then it's like a guitar solo. So all these munchkins have been kind of like coming out of the things, out of the like, you see all these little munchkins, and they get all in a row, and then they're all starting to dance now and do the whole like, we represent the lollipop gang, and they're all dancing together. Well, when they dance, the beat to that part, like, bam, bam, bam.
It's like they're dancing to that music.
It's synced perfect, and it's like dung, 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 and it's so amazing.
Who figured this out?
I don't know who figured it out, and Pink Floyd has said that they don't know what it's crazy. We don't know anything about it.
So they could have.
So they don't.
They could have built that album around the movie.
So one would look at their past of playing along to things on projectors and making music from it and saying, we're going to do this greatest thing ever. Because listen, Dark Side of the Moon, the cover of the artwork, right? And they talk to the artist who made the cover, but it's this prism and through is black and white and out comes color.
Yeah, which is like Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of
out
Oz
in black and white.
Yeah, like of all the things to have, and you know, so it's just like one of those things where like maybe they couldn't do it because it's legally like they would be liable or something. But like, come out with the secret already. Like, tell us, tell us. I'm sure there's like some statute of limitations or whatever,
like the
dude.
50-year classification period for classified stuff in the military.
But it's like, I know that like people are like, oh yeah, that's bullshit. You know, like you're just, what is it called? Confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Oh, it's confirmation bias, this and that, dude. But when you watch it, it's like really hard to ignore the fact that that thing is like pretty close to being like, there's a part, who knows which is which and who is who or whatever. And like, that's when the two witches are on the screen.
Oh,
like,
what?
Yeah. Like there's lyrics in the, I don't know how you would do this.
No, they must have done it. They're trolling. The Pink Floyd must have watched the movie and written the album to it, and they're trolling the entire
here's
world.
my fucking question. All right.
Wait, were you on LSD when you watched this?
No, I wasn't. This was, I don't even think I was stoned the first time I watched it. Here's a funny story. It was the first time I ever watched it. My friend's girlfriend wanted to do it, and she was like, we're doing it tonight, because we were going to a Pink Floyd laser light show that night. I don't know if you've ever been to a Pink Floyd laser light show.
No.
So like you go to like a planetarium kind of situation, you know?
Those are cool.
Yeah, well they would have I don't even know if they do them anymore, but there's a place in Philly that was the Franklin Institute, and that was kind of like a museum kind of thing, and they had this planetarium there, and so I guess for extra money or whatever, they would do Pink Floyd laser light shows. And they would do other bands too, but like the main one. So we were going to go see the Pink Floyd laser light show, and what they do with lasers on the ceiling, just like your stars are right here, they do like all like these different symbols and like artwork and all that shit. Dude, it's totally made for people to just like do drugs and go in there and fucking trip the hell out, right? And I went in there stone sober. I don't even think I was smoking weed at the time. Maybe I was stoned. I forget. But we were eating ice cream all day.
You forgot if you were stoned.
I forgot about
and you're eating ice cream all day.
No, here's the thing. We were eating ice cream and drinking. We were making milkshakes, and we were eating like chocolate ice, Reese's like popsicles, or like not popsicles, but like ice cream
the frozen
stick.
Reese's.
Yeah,
on a stick.
like those things. We were eating those. We were eating ice cream and drinking milk all day, right? Watching Pink Floyd, Dark Side of Oz all day. We were watching this, and then we get in the car and we go to the planetarium, and it's this is my guy, my best friend's girlfriend at the time. It's her birthday, and that's what we're going to the laser light show for. We get down to this laser light show, and we're watching all these laser, and I definitely was stoned now that I'm thinking about it, but anyway, we're watching the laser light show. And I just have the horriblest gas ever. Like, dude, been eating fucking dairy all day, dude. And I'm just like, I'm holding them in, and I got the craziest bubble guts ever, dude. And I'm like, I gotta let them out, dude. I gotta let them out.
Yeah.
And I'm farting, and it's like stinking up many rows. Like, everybody's turning around, like, what the hell? And like, dude, we were just in it, dude. And like, every time I farted, there would be like about like a 20-second delay, and then she would look at me, and like she just knew it was me because I couldn't stop laughing, dude. I was stoned, and I'm like, dude, I'm like holding them in, dude. It was the worst thing ever, but the funniest fucking thing ever, dude.
You gotta lean to the side if there's too much pressure.
Yeah, dude. You remember? You remember Goonies? You remember Goonies when Chunk fucking talks about how he mixes up all this fake puke at home and poured it over the balcony, and everybody just started throwing up all over each other and stuff like that. That's how I felt in this fucking situation. And everybody started getting sick, and they were throwing up all over his drink. It was horrible. I never felt so bad in my entire life.
That was a good movie.
That was a fucking great movie. You know, there's like two versions of that movie. There's a Warner Brothers version and a Disney version of that movie.
Oh, what do they put Nazi stuff in the Disney version or something?
Well, like the Disney one's a little bit more cartoony. Like there's parts that were cut out in the Warner Brothers one. I don't know. Check your facts, people. But I've seen Goonies my entire life the one way, and then I remember it was on TV once or something, and it was like these scenes that got cut out or whatever, where like, you know, they fall, like when they get thrown off the pirate ship at the end, and they're like swimming. They really don't show you like what happens when they fall in the water. Well, like one of the deleted scenes, I guess, was that like Data goes in the water and there's like this octopus under the water and it's like trying to attack him. And then he puts like headphones on the octopus and it starts jamming out and like swims away or something. I might have been on acid for this. No.
Now I can't verify any of this.
Dude, no, hold on. Listen, I'm pretty sure that happened. We'd have to look it up. We needed Jamie in here.
Yeah, that would be cool.
But the point is that I'm pretty sure that there was like 2 alternate versions of that movie or something like that. Maybe it was director's cut, whatever. Maybe that part was cut out, but I know that happened. I'm pretty sure that happened.
That's funny. Yeah, I never saw that version, if that's the case.
No one has. Every time I bring it up, they're like, "You're fucking crazy."
You made that shit up.
Yeah, I did not make it up.
So do you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah, we can. Yeah,
Cool.
definitely. So, it's like the backstory of it basically is that I moved here about a year ago because of an ayahuasca journey that I was invited to a ceremony, and through friends of friends, and I was joining. I had been divorced with my second wife for 4 years. And we relocated from the east, and I moved to Colorado, and she moved to Prescott. And we had eventually, after 4 years of being divorced, we kind of forgave each other a bit, and then and then she invited me to a ceremony about a year ago, a year and a half now, for my 40th birthday. She didn't notice it was my 40th birthday, and she invited me, and so. Through that experience of that ayahuasca journey, and I recommend it to anyone looking for any kind of guidance or answers in their world or their life. I'm not a big crazy drug guy. I know we were talking about acid earlier. I've only done that once or twice, maybe mushrooms here and there, but I think it's definitely something that should be treated with very much a lot of respect. We're talking to higher power, divinity, divine light, all this stuff, directly. But that was my first time with it. And, through that experience, me and my ex-wife, fell back in love and realized that, we still belong together, and we forgive each other for everything that we've ever done to each other. And, now we live with each other again. It's been about a year now. So, through this process, I kind of changed my life a lot. You know, I spent some time, we were, spending time with one another and making sure that this was going to work. But I think, and for those who have experimented with ayahuasca, it's hard to explain exactly, but I think that there's a point, and I've reached this on mushrooms once or twice, just not realized what it was, but there's a point that you're tuned in. And what I describe it as is that I heard a great line by a comedian, God, I forget his name now. He did mention it on a podcast once, but I think this is totally true. Basically we're all FM radios. And there's a signal. There's a higher power out there. There's a satellite. There's an antenna out there, and it's beaming a signal. And the closer we are to receiving that signal, depends on a lot of things: how, our diet, our health, our well-being, all these things, all these factors. And so the goal, and with a lot of people, maybe it would be Eastern philosophies, Hinduism, religions, or spiritual awakenings through psychedelics, have been able to tune in their little FM radio to this signal of this higher power. And when I say higher power, I don't want to get too lost in the sauce with religions and all this other stuff, but if we do believe that there is some kind of magic inside us, I think we all can sort of agree. I know we can explain a lot with science, and that's great, but science evolves.
Can we call it a soul?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just like whatever makes our hearts beat. You know what I mean? Like, aside from you explaining it, not you, but anyone explaining it from electrical signals and all these other things
not
scientifically.
Scientific means, yeah.
But what is life?
Science can't account for a lot of things.
I think, yeah, exactly. And I think it says a lot to us that we're still just on the cusp of trying to recreate, like, even just hands are the greatest invention ever made.
What do you mean we're trying to recreate hands?
Well, it's like we're making these robots now.
Oh,
it's taken
okay.
it's
They're
taken us
struggling with
all
the
this
hands?
time. Well, no, not that they're struggling with hands, but I'm saying like the greatest invention of all time is the human, right? Let's just play with that for a second. That the greatest invention ever made is the human, and because of its adaptability, its intelligence, it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. But these things like hands, like these, what all this circuitry inside ourselves and this emotional capacity and all these things are inventions that we cannot make yet. We cannot recreate this stuff. Yeah, we're getting close with AI, but I think it's still it's not what we're talking about when we say soul or
I think
divine life.
Yeah, they're getting close. They're getting decent at like simulating it.
Yeah.
But creating it, I don't know that that'll even happen.
Yeah, and I don't think that you can ever recreate something like a human, but I mean, whatever that I guess that's besides the point right now. But what we're saying is that there is this magic in each of us that exists somehow in some way, and it's not just electrical signals and all this stuff with math and science, but also something greater, and that these bodies are just vessels, and one day we will either be reincarnated in another vessel and reused, or that our soul or who we are is just details that we think are very important but really aren't, that we are something greater or part of something greater. We are all kind of the same entity, just experienced through different vehicles, that kind of thing. And I don't claim to know or have read much about anything, but I know and what I saw and what I felt in these ayahuasca journeys that I've not devoted my life to, but definitely have been open to in the last year and a half now, and have gained great insights. And I mean, how do you just go start right out the bat on your 40th birthday with what they call it as a breakthrough, and there'd be like this, you purge, you would throw up basically. This the substance that you take and you drink it, and it eventually will make you throw up. And we're sort of, the idea is the throw up is, and they call it a purge. This is sort of the toxins leaving your body. And
the Navajo do the peyote teepee ceremony, and they sometimes the peyote will cause you to purge as well, and they say the phrase "getting well." When you throw up, you're getting well.
Okay.
Because you're basically purging whatever negative thing is stored inside you, whether it's energetically or physically or whatever. It can kind of gather that up and exfiltrate it.
And and that's sort of like through this purging process is when you achieve something at a higher consciousness at this. Not every purge, but the first night would be a little harder than the second. The first night is like a lot of like maybe some shame, some emotional guilt, some things like that you're working through. And then the second night will be like kind of like the big orgasmic type of like, oh my God, I understand the meaning of life in the universe and all that's creatures. I have the power. You feel like you are being birthed again, like literally coming out of the womb into reality, into life, into a soul, into this thing, and you're crying like a baby. And you're, like, it is the most intense feeling that you've ever felt. And like everything's swirling and like you're just fear and your heart's beating, and then like you come out of it, and it was just like, that was very scary. And then when it passes slightly and you realize that you just have all this love for the world, and like you know why you exist, and you have this great feeling of like praise and appreciation for being alive in the world and what the universe means to you and all these things, and you're basically a new baby in the world. So that happened on Sunday.
Wow. That's wild.
Yeah.
No.
And then it was just like, I got to get out of the darkness and into like some light or something, because this is...
I don't mean wild in a derogatory sense that time either. I gotta stop saying it, but that's quite a story, man. That doesn't sound fun or comfortable at all.
No, it's not. It's work. You know,
Yeah.
It's 3 weeks of work leading up to that point of like, you know, like getting your body into the right mindset and, you know, feeding yourself the right things and all this stuff. And then you're finally in it. And it's like, now it's the second night, and you know you're up for another 9 hours of laying on like a little pad in the dark and listening to these same songs. And it's a lot of work, man. And so
Do they do the same songs the second night as the first night? Do they switch it up?
they'll be switched. Yeah, sometimes.
They
yeah.
just
They'll
they
be
do it
singing
according
too,
to like what's happening in the space.
No, there's like certain like songs you like, they're kind of like a ceremonial start to some songs.
Yeah.
And then there'll be medicine songs that we'll all sing together.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, like depending on where you're at in your journey, you'll like kind of come out of it. You'll hear like this, you know, the music will stop, and then we'll all sing together, and you can feel this like this fluttering of like finding the frequency all together in the room, and it's just like all in harmony, like amongst one another.
That is a beautiful feeling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So is the person that runs this type of stuff, do they sing medicine songs to each individual?
No, well, she sings on her own, and if you do know the song and you do have your wits about you and know how to sing, then you can add in.
Yeah.
But that's only because of like you know, trusted friendships and stuff. But
Yeah.
she basically runs it, and she does all of the singing. She'll have instruments or different sounds, like different drums and stuff that she'll play. And
Do you know what tradition she was trained in?
I don't.
Or what country?
I've been told, well, somewhere in South America, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly where. I've been told it before, but I don't remember. It was like she's been trained by the such and such tribe, and da, 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 you know, like it's just like you go down there and you learn and you train and you do it for a really long time, and you learn like what songs do you want to sing and how they mean, what they mean to you, and how you feel through it. And it's definitely like a whole path that you're choosing, and it's definitely amazing. I don't know if it's a lifestyle that I would have ever chose, because it does seem like it has quite a burden, but
It's a lot of responsibility, not only to do it, but to be able to like talk about it.
yeah, to talk about it. And even like some people have very crazy, I mean, me, one of them, like having very intense things that are happening in the corner of the room, and you know, you have to like calm that person down and talk them down. And it's not like everybody's a hysterical thing, but it can happen if you're dealing with some past traumas and all these things. Like I've had a lot of like dark stuff from the past or whatever come up, and this forgiveness, all these things will come up, and people will freak out, you know, they'll have episodes, you know. It can be not very fun for a good portion of the time, and then other times it's pure bliss, and at the end, when it's all said and done, you're like, oh my god, like I'm so glad I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel great and amazing, and I'm definitely going to put some space in there between the next time I do this again.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a long mushroom trip. You're finally ready to be done with it, and you feel good about it, you know. But at the same time, you know, there's some fears in there. You touched on some dark weirdness, and you know, it's not all fun and games, man.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you have a certain view of the world, this type of experience could shatter your entire understanding of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that can really fuck some people up.
Yeah.
And some people, it can, make beautiful things happen in their life and beyond. And it's just, it's crazy. Having had both types of those experiences, having my view of, my understanding of reality be completely shattered by a DMT trip. But it was just, it's wild. So.
And that's like one of the active ingredients in ayahuasca, the DMT. So, it's definitely, and for those who don't know, the DMT is apparently released when we are about to die. And it's like that euphoric feeling that people feel apparently as they're dying or before, like when they see the light or whatever. That's sort of the chemical being released.
I don't know if they know that for sure. I think they've studied that and observed it in rats or mice, but I don't think they've actually in real time observed that in people. But one thing we do know is that the lungs release DMT as well, like with a holotropic breathing. Apparently they've observed that, but I don't know.
Same thing with the stomach, the gut.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And that sort of comes from when you break through of that purge, that throwing up is what induces that DMT release.
Okay.
And so that's why it makes sense to me as far as those things. And man, what is it? There's neurons in your body, in your brain, but you have neurons in your heart
and in your gut. Yeah.
Neurons.
Yeah.
Why are they there? We always say, I got a gut feeling about this and all this stuff, or my heart hurts, or all these things.
It's localized intelligence.
Localized intelligence in the gut.
And so in the heart and the brain.
You spend a night throwing up, you're releasing some things, man.
Yeah.
You're getting in touch with your body and brain. You realize that you are just atoms, a collection of atoms, and you feel like you're connected to something greater. You feel like the divinity.
Going back to that FM radio example, that's a really, really good example because you can tune in to the sacred or the divine or something that's reverent, and that can be a tangible thing. And that can happen in all sorts of ways, not just through ayahuasca, but it's like your consciousness, your awareness is having the frequency of it tuned to a different frequency of awareness through that psychoactive plant or whatever it is. And that can even be an experience, like with breath work or the breath work and the cold exposure. That can, like, that type of stuff can happen in those, or holotropic breathing. So all sorts of different ways that you can retune your awareness to a higher degree. And ayahuasca is the one that you've been working with.
Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said for these ancient traditions and how important they were. And I don't know if there's speculation about the Maya and being able to discover these things in the rainforest and stuff like that, and how one of the reasons why their civilization was so great and powerful was somehow stumbling upon these ingredients and ingesting these materials. And I'm not a historian and by any means, but I just know that I think that I wasn't necessarily a religious person, and I don't consider myself a religious person, but I've always felt like there's something more that we don't know about. Like, imagine just all of a sudden inventing, or not really inventing electricity, but discovering electricity one day. And I feel like just the discovery of electricity, just to know that this thing is in everyone, right? And everything all around. And it's just somehow like this magical thing that just exists. And now it like completely rules our life. But at one point it didn't. We had no idea what it was. And let's just like pretend for a second that the thing that we haven't discovered yet is this spiritual essence that is all around us constantly. And what that does and what creates something like synchronous encounters with, like things with synchronicity or following signs, following patterns, following maybe intuitions, these kind of things or whatever. We have more senses probably than we realize. There's probably a lot more electrically going on with our brains that we don't realize. And we just don't have the science for it yet because no one's really looking because everybody's stoned on LSD or whatever. Yeah, I don't, it's just like one of those things where I don't care about the skeptics, and I don't care about, all I know is what I know, and like, I'm not a skeptical person, but at the same, and I believe in love, and I believe in something greater than us.
Mm-hmm. So before you ever did ayahuasca, did you believe that? You believe there was something greater than us?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like,
Okay.
I think, like, since my childhood, I would believe in certain things, like, oh, did that happen because I said it, or am I, like, just little intuition type things that you kind of tell yourself that, oh, you're just making things up or whatever.
Were you Were you raised in a certain religious faith or anything like that?
Lightly. Like, my mom, like, my mom was raised Catholic, so she was like, my kids ain't being Catholic because I hated it. And then we went to like non-denominational like churches for here and there a little bit, but nothing like crazy enough to be like fully devoted in any like specific belief. But I think that it's something to be said about like the Hindu religion and their philosophy on the chakras, and there's like a lot of stuff in there that I think pertains to, what the philosophy believes in the chakra system is that like we all operate from a certain level of chakra, and there'd be like these root chakras that like these lower end chakras, and then there's these higher end chakras. And so like if a person was being like operating from say lower end chakras, maybe they're just like, they're really operating on a level of like just trying to have sex all the time, or just trying to like have pleasure all the time. And then there's people that really care for one another, and they have a little bit more devotional awareness or emotional awareness or something like that. Maybe they operate a little from a little higher heart chakra place. And then there's some that operate through meditation and all of these methods that come from Eastern philosophies of just being enlightened and like finding something even higher than what we can react to from like just an emotional reaction of somebody, but maybe something higher than that.
Like a monk would be one of those, like a devoted monk would kind of do something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And so these types of, these types of faiths and these types of living or whatever, that's what this, they believe in. And so the idea is that, and we all kind of experience this in some way, some form of like the first time we do mushrooms, let's say, and we just feel like we're more connected to the natural world than we realized. And we can't explain why, but we believe it, And I don't know, man. I just feel like mushrooms are one of the things that's sort of like the gateway drug to the spiritual world in some ways. I want to say spiritual world, not so much as a religious term, but more in maybe just... well,
it's like changing the dial on the FM radio.
Mm-hmm.
Just moving it over a little bit.
Yeah, you're getting a little closer to picking up that signal of like what the meaning of life is, or maybe what we need to do, or our purpose in this world.
It opens up your spiritual awareness.
Yes, that's it. And so you take that steps further and steps further. Like I've had some pretty deep experiences through a lot of mushrooms, or like taking too many mushrooms, or very potent ones at least. And my experience was like insane because I didn't exist. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know the people that I was with. This was like a 4th of July, Crested Butte, on a mountain biking trip, and we're like camping out. This is 2020, so like, everyone's like kind of camping, and it's like 4th of July, but you can't have fireworks because of the fire, but we're not all eating mushrooms, but I did. There was a couple of people that in our group that did, but I really didn't know too many people. I had friends, but anyway, I just went into geometry for a very long time, like full on geometry of all sorts of shapes, and just lost for a while. And then when I came out of that,
are you like laying down and your eyes are closed?
No, I was in front of a campfire.
Okay.
And when I came out of that, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was. The world had ended. We were all in purgatory. We were all lost souls on some world, and we were waiting to go to heaven or hell. I don't know where, but we were just waiting. No one existed. We were all just lost souls in this universe.
That sounds very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and so I could feel that there was a memory of who I was supposed to be and what that person did for a career and what they drove and where they lived and how they got here and all that stuff. I knew that there was a memory of something in there, but that person did not exist. And I was just an empty shell here.
So one thing that the psilocybin does that they've studied on some of these brain scans is it decreases the active energy going to the frontal cortex, which is generally where your sense of self, that's the associated part of the brain with your sense of self, your understanding of identity, and so the psilocybin will decrease blood flow to that place and increase blood flow in other parts of the brain, I believe something along those lines.
Yes. Also, I've heard something about your thinking patterns have paths of neurons that are always connecting a certain way, and what these performance enhancing drugs do is they connect new neurons to different ways. So that's why you make new connections when you're on these drugs and things like that. It was like, oh, I've never thought of that before. Oh my God, like I have the same birthday as I don't know. Like you make different connections. You had this knowledge in your brain, but you've never told your brain to think this way, but it had this knowledge in there. And that's sort of what it's like. And so, yeah, scientifically that all is happening. But tell that to the guy who doesn't know who he is and where he is at.
That's why I'm saying it, is because of that. It's like if you're in that position on psilocybin where you don't know who you are, then that's partially a result of the psilocybin changing either the blood flow or the energy in the frontal cortex.
Yeah.
Okay, you got that.
No, yeah, I got that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that reality of that science doesn't exist
for that guy at that time.
For that guy
totally.
In front of that campfire.
Yeah, no, he doesn't care about that. I'd never say that to somebody who's
having
here's what
that
I'm
experience. Saying. I guess what I'm saying is that we can explain a lot of things with science, but we don't explain why. And I used to have examples of that, but I won't get into that at the moment. But basically, that's where I was in this world, and I had like this almost like a Rubik's cube of like, this is my reality here in front of this campfire, and then I shifted sideways, and now I was driving my car, and I felt like I was driving my truck. And I thought I was going to hurt somebody because I was driving. And I was like, no, I shouldn't be driving right now. And then I would switch, and then I'd be at work. And so I think what I was sort of tapping into, or thinking at least at the time after the fact, was that there's a lot of talk about how time is not linear and time is relative and everything exists all at the same time constantly. And I felt like those... that blood flow to the brain change was making me feel like I was experiencing multiple timelines at the same time, multiple existences at the same time, or kind of maybe even blurring where those boundaries are cosmically or mentally, and
overlapping.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and I had said, like, your time distortion was a big thing. And so I felt like I was doing this forever and that I would be this way forever. I would constantly be switching through time over and over again. I would travel time, past, present, future, past, present, future, past, present, future, like that, and that quick, like dizzying, and I would feel that for eternity. And that's how it felt.
That's rough, man.
It was very rough.
I've been in something kind of like that, and you start to get nauseous.
Yeah, you get nauseous, and so that was like my first experience where, like, man, I would take mushrooms, man, like, hey, and just push the envelope. Ooh, I went crazier that time. Cool, this is nuts. And then when I had that, it was like, whoa, I need to reevaluate everything. And
did you have an intention going into this time eating mushrooms? You just want to eat mushrooms just because?
This is earlier in my psychedelic journey, I guess they would call it. I hate the word journey now.
You don't have to use it. It's just, but did you go? That's true. You probably know. But did you go? You didn't go into it with a specific direction or goal or purpose.
No, I think right now in this level of my life, it's like sort of like experimenting with these drugs because you're camping with friends, and you're doing something like fun around the campfire kind of thing. And not so much in a ceremonial way. I think I didn't really get into the ceremonial part until the ayahuascas. But in the same way that cannabis is used as a party drug, I feel like psilocybin is doing the same thing in some ways. And I think it's good. It has good things as bad things. I think I want more people to experience new parts of their brain that they never thought were there. And at the same time, there are obviously a lot of problems from that. And I think we kind of see how perverse the cannabis industry's become as far as like making it bigger and stronger and greater. And like, oh, you're a strong man because you did 1,000 milligrams. It's like the age old thing of like alcohol. Like, look how many beers I drank over this one night. And
dick measuring contest.
Yeah. It's become a lot of ego eccentric things. And then party games are all around it. And like, that's where weed's going. And I'm sure that, like I've heard stories that psilocybin's sort of like getting a lot stronger now. And so we'll see where that goes, man. I guess that's like, that's the cause and effect of the modern
need for more.
Yeah. Our need to constantly change and make better what we think is better, and really kind of like muddy in the waters of what the natural world is. But yeah, in that experience, like I eventually kind of came out of it and knew who I was again and stuff like that. But I was really rattled, man. Like, and I didn't touch mushrooms for like a year. And then I started to kind of like maybe just have a little bit here and there, just like I'm like, ooh, man, I don't want to ever go there again. But totally. I think I waited about, maybe it wasn't even a year, because I probably waited maybe 6 months, because I think it was the next time was like in like around Thanksgiving. That was 4th of July. So Thanksgiving, I tried to like, I didn't have any family in Colorado. So it was like me and the girl I was dating kind of did mushrooms, and I didn't think I took that much, and I went straight back to that place. But this time it was a little bit more Aztec. It was a little bit more like this, these Aztec faces were sort of, or like, the pictures of like the Aztec sun, like they're like that real
where it has like squiggly
zigzag
rays.
Yeah, something like that, like carved out of stone, if you can imagine. Those faces and stuff like that. Those faces were like appearing like all around. And it was just this doom of like, what are you doing here, and why are you here again? And it was just like...
Is that the feeling you got, or was there like those faces were saying that to you?
Those faces were saying that through the look of me. That was the feeling I had within me. It wasn't that they were saying these things. And it was like shapes or whatever that looked like faces or something, It was a hallucination part. But I, again, went into nowheresville of not knowing anything anywhere. And I was just like, and it took me a while to get out. And I went into a loop. I go into like a feedback loop where I'm like, really? But oh my God, but really? Man, really? And I can't believe that I'm here again, you know, and I don't know who I am and all this stuff. So like, it was just like, no more psychedelics for me, man. I'm done.
Yeah, I had a friend who had that happen to her every single time, and it was just like every time be like, oh, I feel like I've been here before, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, and she would get stuck in this loop. I felt so bad for her.
They're called something. There is a modern terminology for it, like spinning out or something like, you know, the music festival world has come up with some terms for that. I haven't looked it up yet, but I think that what I learned now, I watched a podcast with a woman. I think it was a Rogan podcast with a woman who's taken psychedelics all her life, and she's like a professor and all this stuff. And she was explaining that when you hit these points of too much, your brain remembers how you feel, and those points get re-triggered when you go back into that world again. So it's not so much that you are taking the same amount as you did before, but you're re-triggering your brain to tell it of like, hey, this is how you reacted before. Because what I've experienced before these bad changes is that what I thought was the things that I was thinking about before in the previous time that I took mushrooms, I was thinking about now, and I was making new connections about those past things. It was almost like what I called them was portals. And it was sort of like I was reopening a portal that I could travel back to this time, like through my past into that previous time that I had taken these mushrooms and felt this way. That portal was now open. So now this is a timeline that I can transfer to. So these were times when each time that I took mushrooms was a different portal, and I would go in between those timelines at will, or even I've experienced them later on. I would experience these songs that I would listen to during an ayahuasca ceremony. They play songs live, and they also play recorded songs, and they're called medicine songs. And these medicine songs, some of them are very powerful, and it's like the best music you've ever heard in your entire life. And some of that's the drugs talking, the performance enhancing drugs, but also it is just really profound music.
It's something else, I think.
And these songs touch you.
Yeah.
And when you hear them normal, like a week later, you hear that song, you are brought back. It's almost that same, nostalgia feeling that you feel when you hear a song. You would feel that nostalgia.
It's like times 20, times 30.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It's so much more intense.
Yeah. But what I was doing, what I realized was, and this is after the ayahuasca journey, I had taken mushrooms again. I was trying to find where I could be in mushroom place.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking maybe I healed that part of that psychedelic place. And with mushrooms, I went to the place that I did on ayahuasca. So this sort of backed up this theory that like when your brain is triggered, you're going to go back into these states. So now I would go there on the ayahuasca journey now through these mushrooms because I've re-triggered it. And now what I was doing was I was taking the songs that I heard in ayahuasca 3 or 4 months before, and I was taking those songs and I was hearing them now in my head, or I was hearing them in previous times where I've taken mushrooms in these portals. I was taking songs from this other time and bringing it in 5 years previous.
So you're hearing it in that later psychedelic trip?
Yeah, imagine going back to a memory that you had in your brain, but taking music with you and hearing those songs as like a soundtrack to your previous 5 years ago, your previous time that you took mushrooms. Now you have that song and you're re-remembering that song.
That's why they call it a medicine song. That makes sense now because it made sense before, but that gives more credence and understanding to me to like, okay, you can, because it's kind of been imprinted on you because you take the psychedelic, you become spiritually open. The song is the frequency that kind of imprints upon your spirit or your soul. And then when you go back into a new space and you are opening your spirit, that song imprintation is still there. So you can call upon that, like almost like a let's say and melody to bring it into that space of the present moment in that trip later on.
And music does this all the time, right? Like we hear a song that we heard in our high school years and we think about like the girlfriend we had at the time or the dance or whatever happened, like the car that we crashed. you know, like stuff like that. And that was the rule of 3, by the way. You do the one, the other, and then you finish on the funny one.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, but the it's like what that nostalgia is sort of happening now through mental space. I guess anyway, the point is that the ayahuasca journey is a good journey, but I think it's made for people. It's got its own self-filtering device. It's if you were in a place where you're looking for your next, like, I'd heard of the term ayahuasca. It had come up here and there, but I wasn't looking for it. It kind of found me eventually a year later, you know, like this kind of thing is.
I'm feeling some real Matrix vibes right now.
And you don't, it's like it finds you a little bit in some ways, but it's only finding you if you're looking.
Well, that's the thing. First of all, you have to have like the stance toward the world that there is some sort of purpose here and that there is something greater. And then that will allow for for that thing to become available in your life, whether it's just hearing about it or whatever. And then, you know, if you choose to go down that path, that's up to you. But so as far as the experience that you had, was there something specific you went in with and something you brought out?
Yeah. So I think what I've learned through help from other people is to go in with intentions, but those intentions are also sort of questions. So you're learning how to speak to the goddess. And at first you'll think the goddess is your own inner mind thinking. And then you'll realize that you're not talking to yourself. You're talking to something.
So in layman's terms, that would be like the consciousness of the plant, like the life force that inhabits the plant. So it's like we have a soul inside us. Let's say the plant has a soul, and that's what you're talking about, talking to.
Some could say that. Some would also say that you are talking to the infinite higher power, like the God, the creator, the God. And I think that's widely believed. Like, I think that the feeling that you're going to get, or what you're going to understand, is 100% certainty. There is no question. This is the truth. And there's not going to be a second where you doubt it. And this is sort of like, you'll never doubt that light over there is blue, right? Like, that's how certain you are on this. This is how certain you are that you're talking to a higher force, a higher being.
Well, and that a higher force or higher being versus the creator. I want to make sure that I'm really clear on.
No, I think it's the creator. I mean, but I think the term creator kind of is, I think there is no definite understanding that this is the creator.
Yeah.
It didn't maybe create us, but this is a force that is greater than us and all knowing and has all the wisdom. And you'll learn basically that you want to ask this questions like, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Obviously, they're important questions. So as I've progressed, I've learned to bring these questions with me, like, should I be eating meat? A previous time I've asked, should I be eating meat? And like, what is meat? Like, is meat bad? Is meat murder? You start to feel and question these things as you start to do more in ayahuasca ceremonies. And this is part of the process of if you don't know, the part of the process of doing the ayahuasca is the dieta. So you're starting to taper down meat, you're starting to taper down salt, sex, masturbation, drugs, alcohol, any kind of supplements, like
preparing your physical body to be able to handle ingesting the ayahuasca.
Correct. And even like physical activity like yoga, things like that, like start to ramp that up. Even like getting mind and body pure is possible. And some people take this serious and some people don't. And I think we're starting to learn about gut biome and things like that. And like that, like there's tiny bugs that are in our intestines and they're basically sort of telling us that we want meat because we eat, that's all we eat, things like that. We have death. we have parts and pieces of death in our bodies, in our lower intestines, that stay in there for a very long time. Like these are rotted pieces of flesh that are stuck in our bodies.
I disagree with this.
Okay.
And I could tell you why, based on my experience with doing the carnivore diet in January of this year. It was pretty incredible because it reformulated my relationship with hunger signals, and it actually cleaned out my system, and I dropped a ton of weight, and my thinking got sharper, and all kinds of stuff. So I think there's a lot more factors than what we can decide is actually happening to every person when they follow this particular eating path.
Yeah.
And I think that your belief also plays a part about it.
Well, I think that I'm not denouncing in any way the meat carnivore diet. I would say that when we're doing drastic things to our body, whether it's depletion, cutting back, or adding, or going full bore with something else, we're bound to have changes, whether they're beneficial or negative in some ways or other ways. We're definitely we're going to see results. And so I don't say, this isn't a say you don't eat meat. I think that there's benefits in meat, but I think also what I'm trying to say is that this process of the ayahuasca diet beforehand, the belief is that you're cleansing your body of these past things. And when you are clean and you've gone through this experience, you start to question, should I be eating meat? It starts to just come up. And I'm not saying that it's part of ayahuasca. I think what it is scientifically is that it's part of removing it from your diet, your everyday diet. Now, I've done this before multiple ways, and I've really started to just cut back on meat in general. I think we have meat in every meal all the time. And so I started to cut back on meat. And I think the more that you do that, the easier it is to do. And that is because of maybe the gut biome or these things in your body that are kind of telling you, hey, we want more meat. We want more meat.
Can I tell you my theory?
Uh-huh.
I think that what it's doing, possibly in addition to that, is bringing an awareness to consumption. It's just asking you to ask yourself, what am I consuming and why, and what is it doing for me? Rather than meat's this or meat's that, because it doesn't. For me, it didn't just propose the question of meat. It was all things. And this has happened to me with every psychedelic, including cannabis, that I've used. It brings an awareness to what is the consumption of each of these things.
You were explaining that earlier too. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and there was one other thing. What I was speaking about earlier when I mentioned the carnivore diet is that the dead and rotting flesh sitting in the lower intestine. I know that I've heard stuff about that before, but I think that that's only in cases where you're combining the meat with other things, or you're not having enough stuff to be able to move it through. I don't think that eating red meat means that you have dead, rotting flesh in your lower intestine, because your body has the ability to push that stuff through. So I think it's only when in conjunction with other certain things. That's just my piece. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, that could be possible, but I think the combination of many other things would be really vague in this case because of all the things we put in meat. All the preservatives, all the extra stuff. We're not talking about a piece of lean meat. We're talking about what we're really, and this is sort of going where my story was going, was processed meat and ground meat. Yeah. I wanted to ask the goddess what she thought about eating meat, because my experience is that the more people that I know that I've met through ayahuasca and that have done it more than I have started to kind of just not eat meat, slowly just phased it completely out. And there's a correlation that I've been seeing with the ayahuasca. Now, I think there is something to do with learning about how we were all the same entity, we were all connected, we were all one, and all of this, we were all parts of like we're all bees within this beehive, you know,
Mhm.
in some ways. So these animals are us, and we
Yeah.
are animals, and all these other things.
Everything we do affects one another.
Yeah, and but more than that, we're all made of the same atoms. We're all made of the same essence in some ways. We're just, these ones are human and these ones are not, or whatever. So I think that there's some kind of like understanding, or this new understanding of like what living creatures are, and maybe more of an appreciation for it, and that's what starts to deplete the need to eat meat, or the want to eat meat, or maybe it's starting to feel disgusting to you, things like this. And it sort of goes back to a little bit more about what you were saying about like being a little bit more conscious about what's being in your body and what is being eaten, and how that makes you feel, and what's your body is reacting to it, a lot of things. But my question was just like, should I be eating meat? You know, because I feel like I had been working out. I've been on a higher protein diet. You know, like, what's the deal with meat? And I had asked her, and at this time, I'm not getting full responses back, but more visuals as I ask. And what I saw is these tiny little cute alpacas, and they're in this little field, you know, and they're just so cute. They're round and fuzzy, and there's like a little baby one, and the mamas are all like kind of in this little herd, and they're the mamas, and they're just taking care of the babies. And there's just like a bright sunny day, and there's nothing to harm them. They're just living in, you know, bliss, or what some would say. And then there's this understanding, instant understanding, that man is different than woman, and that the burden of being a man is we carry war with us. We are the protectors, and we are also the ones who need to be, you know, we were the protectors, and we need to be protected from as well. We have this burden in us.
The protector and the predator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we are not these alpacas, and men are these predators, and we carry this burden, and this burden of death, and that's okay, and that's natural, and we're sort of providing, just as every living creature has this purpose of like this certain hierarchy, and we are the carnivore warrior. And you become very in touch with the warrior side of who you are as a man. At least you become the inner warrior comes out in you. This primitive person, this creature, you know, comes out of you, and it's not a primitive thing as in it's like raw. It's actually beautiful. It's more of like
Primal.
the native. Yeah, it's the native way. You know, like it's I'm the protector, and this is my family, you know, and that's what I felt. And there's a lot of in my journeys, I have a lot of Native American, mostly like more of like the totem, like the more Northern Pacific Native American, and these totems, kind of like this imagery of the totem and all these things, and the eagle came to me. And this is sort of like this, you are the eagle, you oversee, you see all, you oversee your family, and you can kill when you need to kill. But the things that you will kill are what the eagle would eat. And so we have this, you know, as far as the meat industry is concerned and all these things, we don't really eat animals anymore. We eat products that are sold at stores. And I saw this vision of an animation of like Meatwad from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, it kind of looked like. I don't know if like you can picture that meatball, animated meatball. And there was a bunch of them, and they were all sitting there, and they opened their mouths, and they were like, bleh, and they were like all of this hamburger meat, which is basically just pouring out like waterfalls into this river of this sludgy pink meat river. And this is sort of like this perversion of like what used to be what was natural, and now is, when you eat ground beef, you're not eating one cow. This is not the hunter that has gone out and made the kill of the deer and is now feeding it or cooking it over the flame to feed his family. and to be stronger and live for another day. This is this mashed up slurry of multiple animals all mixed together, multiple organs, multiple meats, all of these things just mixed together and flowing in a stream, and that made me sick.
Yeah. So that's really true depending on where it comes from.
Of course.
Because if you're talking about factory farming, which is what it sounds like, that's what it's going to be.
Well, I think what we're talking about is just societal norm, right? Like you could, of course. Yeah, there's a butcher around the corner and you can, anybody can do anything. I think it's this is not a way to live. I'm not selling anything to anyone. I'm not saying that this is murder and all this stuff. I'm just explaining to how I felt. And I think that, you could find many options. Basically what you could find all the options in the world for beef, for anything. What I experienced in that was processed meat and how that makes you feel in that moment. And that's what's stuck in my head now. And that was enough to say, okay, processed meat, sausage, pepperoni, things that are just ground up. When you really start to think about what it is, it's very gross. We've gotten to a place where it's very gross.
Yeah.
And now compare that to eating a chicken breast, right? One piece of chicken breast. And I know there's a whole process involved too. Yeah. I'm not preaching. There's not every form of, until I'm going out and killing the deer myself with my hands and doing all this. Yeah. But there is a reality, or not a reality, but something that's realistic in there of how to carry yourself a little bit more morally, to have a little bit more of a higher standard of what we ingest.
So I know a guy I mentioned earlier as one of the loopers, the guy that does music looping. His name is Porangi, which is Portuguese. He's born in Brazil. It means the beauty way. That's what his name means. And he would use the phrase being a steward of the earth. And as a steward of the earth, then you factor in all of the things that are happening and what's the best approach for ultimate balance in that way that takes care of you, takes care of the animal, and takes care of the earth all at the same time. So you don't have to trade one for the other like society preaches, or on the far left or the far right or whatever. It's just stewarding the earth, it sounds like, is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. And I think when you start to get more into this level of this primal being that's in you.
Well, yeah, especially with like if you take mushrooms out in nature or something, then you get really tapped into that primal spot. And or at least this is something that I've experienced walking out in the woods on psychedelics, is you get really tapped into that primal, and you can feel the life force moving in like the things around you, like the trees, like the animals if you see them. Like you can really feel the connectivity of it all. And that experience itself offers you the desire to treat it with respect.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. And I think that's why it's good that mushrooms are sort of on a higher scale now, as far as like being kind of infiltrating
more accessible.
More minds.
Yeah. Infiltrating.
But I think like
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your description of the, you're talking about the chicken. And if you raw chicken, or not a raw chicken breast, but if you eat a chicken breast, or if you kill the deer with your own hands, I don't remember where you were going.
I was picking up there. So I think it's when you get in touch with this primal life, this primal way of living, then you would start to realize that you're not going to eat meat every day. You're going to have your hunt, you're going to have your feast, and then you're going to go back to foraging until the next hunt, until mass production of, mass extinction of buffalo and all these other things come into play. The idea is to have a sacredness with what you kill. And so this past weekend journey, one of the questions I was coming back around on, I just felt like I should ask, like, I know it's processed, but this tuna was calling to me from the tuna fish, like decent tuna fish, like wild caught or whatever. I'm not getting super like moral with every single thing. It's not a religion, man. I'm not creating some kind of like boundary that I need myself. I just want to try to think a little bit more and be a little more mindful of like what I'm doing and what I'm ingesting.
Yeah.
So I guess the thought was basically like, man, there is a point where your conscious clicks and now you are in tune. My dial is moved to the frequency and I am now speaking to her. And now I'm having direct conversations sort of with her. And I was like, I can talk to you now. And she's this yellow lampshade light that's kind of like beaming over me now. And she's like, there you are. And I'm like, this little boy that's kind of looking up at his mommy, you know? And I'm just like, I don't know. I have these questions. Can I ask these questions to you? You know, like I have a couple questions and I'm like all embarrassed and like bashful. And this is all in my head. I'm not saying this out loud. And she's like, of course, sweetheart. Go on with your questions. What are your questions? And then that was my first one was just like, I'm having trouble like knowing like what kind of meat I should be eating. And like, I do feel like, sometimes I feel bad about eating chicken. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I feel bad about like fish. Is it even clean enough? Like tuna is definitely processed. You know, you're not eating. There are like chunk tuna. I guess it's a piece of one fish and not so much. I'm just like wondering where that is. And there was a little bit more insight with this one where it was just, I saw this picture. It was sort of like, you know, the Leonardo da Vinci diagram kind of thing.
The Vitruvian Man.
Yeah, it was like that, but it was sort of like a diagram of that, but also kind of like the wolf and the bird and the owl and the fox and all of these animals were all kind of like in the same diagram and the same kind of thing in this rotating pattern. Like we are all one. We are all equal in our own right. And she basically said, and as I was watching this, she basically said like, just have respect for us. That's all that you need to remember is have respect for us. Eat respectfully, you know, consume respectfully. That's it. It's not going out and getting a hamburger with bacon and all this bullshit on there. It's not like being this American. It's just perverse. It's what's porn, you know, like what porn's become. It's what the cannabis industry's become. It's been blown out of proportion.
Yeah. Completely disrespectful toward the thing.
Exactly.
That it's surrounding.
This is the thing that died. I'm eating it. I'm feeding my children with this. We're having chicken tonight. We'll have vegetables tomorrow. You know, like it's not, I don't need to, I definitely felt like having a bunch of leftovers in the fridge and constantly reheating this old carcass over and over again was gross.
Yeah,
you know?
I
Like
thought about that.
It was like, hey, I'm going to make a small portion of meat and we're going to eat it for this meal. Maybe we'll have some leftover for tomorrow, but we're not going to like stock up and, you know, do this whole dance of, you know, like just be more respectful. This creature's life was taken, so now you can survive and that's okay. Be respectful.
Yeah.
And that's what she sort of underlined in this past weekend for me.
Well, that's good stuff.
That's one thing. But yeah, I mean, there's more. I know we're going on, but
yeah, that's fine. I'm just curious about what your experience was. Do you ever pray over your food?
No, I don't.
Or say any kind of words about it?
I haven't felt called to. My wife does.
Okay.
Her food, she doesn't eat meat anymore. There's something to be said for phases. And I think we don't allow ourselves phases. We think that it becomes a religion, it becomes a faith, it becomes a belief, and then it has to be this hard boundary, and then that hard boundary has to be criticized or challenged by other people who don't believe it, or like, well, actually, you know, you could do this, or actually, you know, like you say you don't eat meat, but you eat this, and all these other things, you know, like, well, if you believe in this, then you must believe in that, or like, how come you're not doing it this way? You know, like, I think there's like that human aspect of like, oh, you're vegetarian, well, I'm vegan, you know, like there's just this one-up,
the dick measuring contest.
Yeah, it comes into play, and it's like, it's even for moral things, and it's just like, no, you don't have to be a vegan your entire life. No, you don't have to be a vegetarian. You don't have to have these things. You can go through these phases. And she's gone through phases and been flexible about things, just following what you feel at the moment, you know?
This one time I went camping, and I went with a buddy of mine who either rarely or never goes camping. And he was so excited. So he's like, we need to buy some steaks. This is very exciting. We're going to cook steaks over the campfire. And we did. We also happened to take LSD before doing that and ate the steaks while on LSD. And my experience was terrible.
That's so crazy.
It was so...
That's such a bad combination when I hear it.
Dude, there was fear. There was just like, I felt like just this after eating the meat. Because it was like store-bought meat. It wasn't good grass-fed local anything.
Yeah.
It was just processed crap. And I just felt the like fear gripping at my chest, and I could feel like the animal, like the fear of the spirit of the animal after eating that from having, you know, that spiritual vulnerability.
Yeah.
To be able to empathize with what was inside my body that had come from outside.
That is, and it's interesting because we talk about how our senses are heightened, and we feel these things and all this stuff, and like what you're experiencing is like an extra profound feel of like a certain thing that you would never have felt if your senses weren't enlightened. And I think that kind of aligns with, like, you know, the Hindu, you know, they're mostly vegetarian, but they do believe that like the cow is sacred. You know, they believe the cow is a sacred being. You know, This is a whole religion. This is a whole group of people on the planet that don't believe that you should ever murder these creatures.
Do you know? Well,
and what I was going,
why they believe that?
Not exactly, no. But do you?
I don't know.
Okay.
There's a theory that it's because the mushrooms grow in their shit.
Interesting.
I don't know if they use mushrooms or what, but that's the only theory that I've heard.
So that
to real quick to put a cap on that LSD processed cow steak story. After that, I did 32 days with no meat to see what was going on there and why people do that and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And there's some really nice physiological changes that I went through. Like I had more energy that was more sustainable for longer periods of time. But then I couldn't like lift up something as heavy if I needed to. So it was interesting to see. My mind got a little sharper for a time. Yeah,
I think there's, like I said before, I think there'd probably be benefits in every
fasting
new any kind of new diet change.
Yeah,
but I think like what I was gonna say is that the Hindu believe that this cow is sacred and this is an highly intelligent creature that is capable of emotion.
Yeah,
and that when you are a cow and you're waiting on that killing floor, you're going through emotional turmoil and a lot of stress going through that process of being killed. And through that process, that stress, and this is what Shamji believes, is that stress is in those chemicals that are released are in that meat. And now you're ingesting this, let's just say, bad energy, if you want to even call it that.
Well, I mean, we can even put it into kind of scientific terms because you have the stress hormones that get released from the what's the system in the body? The
endocrine system?
Yeah, I think it would be the endocrine system that those glands release stress hormones, and those stress hormones, they permeate in through the muscles. And you get tense, and then you get killed, and then you get processed and sent to somebody, and then they eat that. So those, like, chemically, like you were saying, it's stressed meat.
You know, and that's exactly, so it's like, all right, so the intelligence of the creature kind of could matter of what you would be eating. And then also the availability of that creature that you'd be eating would kind of factor in, I would think, too. Like when we look at the abundance of nature, hundreds of millions of shrimp, you know, to be eaten in one gulp by a whale. by one whale, right? And only a handful of whales in the world, but even before that, still, this abundance thing. And then you look at like seeds, or seeds and how they're spread throughout, from trees and pollen, all these other things. It's abundance. It's letting out a massive amount of something because there's a survival rate, but also that's being fed. It's feeding the other creatures. All these seeds are being eaten by birds and life and all these other things, right?
Yeah, and then dropped far away, and then it creates a new plant that does it more.
So when we look at like how many creatures are on this planet and what ones we should be eating versus ones maybe we shouldn't be, or ones that were more ethical or ones that are less ethical, you would look at abundance too. Of like if a creature has 6 puppies, or something like, well, now like we look down on people who eat dogs, like an intelligent creature that is our pet. Pigs are just as smart as dogs. We eat pigs. We don't eat, dogs. And so there's like certain little things that we kind of like, we do this, but we don't do that. Is there a difference? I don't know. Like, look how many fish are in the world. Like how many tiny little fish can feed a family, or chickens, or, come in flocks and, they multiply and, you get quite a bit of them. Rabbits, like these tinier creatures that are varying in different levels of emotional understanding and awareness in our food. Those stress hormones maybe aren't released into the meat from a fish. Like I'm just looking at like, I think it's wise to look at patterns within the nature in order to understand what the next move is.
I think you're right, and I think that's what wisdom is.
Yeah, 100%. Like we look at like, man, the eclipse happened the other day, and I'm just now learning that you shouldn't be in the eclipse. You shouldn't be ingesting that. Well, some would say that.
I read some of the superstitions, but I don't know why. What makes? How did you learn that you shouldn't be standing outside during an eclipse?
Well, all right. So my experience was that the first time I've ever seen a full-on eclipse, I went on a road trip with my wife and 2 friends, and we drove from Philly down to the border of North Carolina and Tennessee, I believe, to see full totality. And we were on a river and we saw full totality. And our marriage ended. Like, look, there's a lot of factors.
That's so funny you say that. I was telling my coworker this the other day. It's like, I'm about to pull up a picture here of the eclipse that I went to see full totality of in Oregon. Mm-hmm. And immediately after this, it was it's like within like a month or 2 months.
That's a great picture.
It was one of the most intense experiences I've ever had, was being under that eclipse with all these people, thousands of people on a hillside, just dead silent. Mm-hmm. And right after that, I met who is now my son's mom, my ex, and it was just very, very, very difficult relationship. And it's funny. It's just funny that you mentioned that you got divorced right after that.
So yeah, man, I forget. Maybe that happened in July. Maybe we were divorced the following year or something like that. And she believes that, like, I don't know, there was like some dark energy on that trip a little bit. And maybe that was like, I mean, look, we had problems. We were in a relationship and stuff. But she's heard this. I guess if we just look at planetary forces colliding and I don't know, there's like a certain, so going back to the patterns of nature, I would look at the tides and how they're affected by the moon. The moon's gravitational pull affects the tides, it affects the fish, it affects a lot of things. The sun affects a lot of things. These like huge entities, they affect us in some ways or another. The eclipse, it's not so far out to think that energy or whatever is happening in that moment or whatever could be something. So it's just a theory. But then, like, I don't know if you remember, I mean, of course everything's silent, but I don't know. You look like you were in a crowd of people. I was on a lake, and I was in a lake in a kayak in the middle of a lake, and no bugs, like crickets, nothing. It was completely silent. Everything just stopped. And maybe that's because they thought it was dark, whatever. But no birds were flying. There was just nothing existing. Like the animals knew to be out of that energy. They went home. And the other day when we had this eclipse.
That's a good indicator.
Well, you look at the other day we had the eclipse and the dog was barking, come, let me inside, like right away. Like, yeah. And it was like and then the chickens were inside their coop. They're never inside their coop during the day, like, and maybe they think it's dark. I don't know, but they think and that wasn't a full on eclipse the other day. It wasn't like totality was dark, but that wasn't full eclipse. It just felt like maybe the sun was behind a cloud for a while, but it was like stronger and intenser than that.
It was more.
And I'll tell you,
it was very intense.
So
and it was cold.
Yeah.
It got cold.
So my wife told me, she said, listen, the eclipse is happening at 11. I don't want you to be out in that eclipse. I know you're going on a motorcycle trip, or I just was doing a ride in the morning. She's like, I know you're going on a motorcycle ride. Could you just at least like get lunch or something at 11? Just be inside. Just don't be in the...
It peaked at 9:30.
Well, so what she had looked up was 11 she saw, and she made a mistake. Yeah, it peaked at 9. So I'm out riding, and I went to that point that I showed you, and that was that picture where it was like, okay, this trail kind of stopped, and it was a little gnarly, and I was by myself. It was a little gnarly downhill section. I was like, I'll come back with a friend or something before I go down that way and see where that goes. So I went back with my friend Sal, and we're standing at the edge there, and we were just bullshitting for a while, and we're talking, and I started to feel like strange. And I look up, and I'm like looking around, and I'm like, oh my God, like, is that behind a cloud? No. I was like, is it happening right now? I was like, holy shit, what's happening right now? And then I started to feel like weird. And then we're like, okay, well, let's ride down this steep, gnarly section with the eclipse behind us. It was like basically like looking over our shoulders. We were riding down, like I could see my shadow. As we're going on this really gnarly, and my bike is a heavy bike, and I was picking up speed, and I was like really on the very edge of like holding it all together, like in this intense moment, like of fear. And we get to the bottom, and we go around the corner, and then like the trail got even more gnarly, and then it kind of just ended, and it was just like, holy crap. And we like stopped, and we were trying to put our bikes on kickstands. And like Sal put his bike, and like just his bike fell over, and it's a brand new bike, and he got this big scratch on the side, and we're like picking up our bikes, and we're like, oh my God, we got to turn around. And it was just like this intense moment of like, kind of like, shit, we got to climb back up that gnarly section because we're stuck now. And I have to get home by 11 because I guess the eclipse is starting, and I don't want to be in this eclipse, but I feel like it's happening now, but I'm ignoring that because I need to get the hell out of here. So there's like all of this, like chaos. All of a sudden, like it just all hit all at once, and we were just like, now we got to climb back up, and we picked this bike back up. When a bike falls over, it's kind of like somebody dropped a baby. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like your heart skips a beat for a second, like, oh man, like you have that moment. It was just all of this like intense feeling, man. And then so now we're climbing that gnarly section back up, man, and I'm just like, and I'm like going and going and going, and like I was like hit a couple like bigger rocks, and it was throwing me off course, and it was all washed out in the center, so I was like falling into the crevice and trying to keep away from that. Yeah. And I almost lost it at the top, and I'm just like all of a sudden like realizing I'm just like fighting for my life in this like thing. And then we headed back, and then it started to get brighter out, and I was like, oh man, like the eclipse happened earlier than she told me. And yeah, it was basically supposed to be over at 11, but at full like capacity at like 9:30 or whatever when I was doing this gnarly shit. So yeah. I can say that like my heart rate and everything kind of like bumped up a notch, not because I was afraid that an eclipse was happening, but it felt eerie.
That's the word that I kept using.
Yeah.
It felt exactly that. And I stood outside.
Sorry.
Oh no, you're good.
Do you know this has happened. I felt this feeling before, but you know, in Beetlejuice, where they can't leave the house.
I haven't seen it.
Oh shit. Well, they're dead and they're ghosts and they're stuck in this house basically, and they're stuck in this house and they try to leave and they go out the front door and it just turns into this real weird animated like sand dunes forever, like you're looking off into eternity, and there's like these like sand worms that are huge worms that they're just like diving in and out of the sand.
Like Tremors.
But the feeling that you get when you look, yeah, like Tremors. The feeling that you get when you look out there is almost like, just imagine like a lightning storm, a lightning storm on like a desert plain that is just like sort of like black and white and color all at once, and just a feeling of like eerie, like looking off into eternity. I can't explain it. It's something about like Twilight Zone kind of feel.
That's a good way to describe it, Twilight Zone, because the way I think about it is like, this feels like a reminder of what life could be like if we didn't have the sunshine.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
Yeah. Or even if it was like the sun kind of just like burn out halfway. Imagine if we just got like a half.
Don't say that. Oh, I don't like that shit.
That would be like, imagine it would be like that level of weird eeriness. Like, now look, maybe it's like we're just programmed to always be under the sun and, you know, all this stuff. But at the same time, like, and that's why it feels eerie, right? Like we can rationalize it. But there's just something a little weird, man. Like all those animals going in. Like I didn't hear crickets, nothing, dude. Birds, nothing, man.
Well, do you normally hear crickets in a kayak on a lake during the day?
Well, like I guess it's just not the sound of crickets themselves, but let's say cicadas.
Okay.
Like just the sound of like the sound of a summer around a lake, right?
Yeah.
Like the sound of insects, right? You hear them. Not so much crickets, I guess. No, I'm with you. But like that sound.
I had to ask.
That sound all just like, it was like.
Yeah.
It was strange.
Yeah.
And that feeling I felt the other day reminded me of it, but it also, I did feel like this was like, it felt like the reality of the world and everything like that was all gone. Like it was almost like that same kind of purgatory in between life and existence and reality. You're kind of in that moment.
Yeah.
You know?
That's a great way to describe it. I think that is how it felt. I had I was working that day, so I had access to a welding mask. So I took the plate out of the welding mask and I held it up and I was able to look at it a whole bunch of different times during. So I was like, I had read like partway into it that like a lot of different cultures believe that you shouldn't be exposed to it for different reasons. Like in Mexico, there's a belief that it causes the cleft lip or the cleft palate. And like it's very specific. And then like it's either, I don't know if it's Hindu, but it says from India, they believe that you're not supposed to cut your fingernails or cut your hair during that time. Other ones said that you're not supposed to urinate or have sex or drink water during that time.
Wow.
And it's like all these different beliefs from all these different places. And I felt like before it happened, there's a raven on top of the light pole looking in that direction, cawing, just no, that's not the sound it made. What was it doing? It was making some noise. Dude, that one, that's perfect. That was.
It's deeper, right? It's like.
How the fuck are you doing that? You're freaking me out, man.
I do a lot of noises.
That's perfect. That's exactly what they
That's how it
sound like.
sounds like
First
it.
time I ever heard a raven do that, I got goosebumps. I looked at it. I was like, what is it doing? I didn't know they made that sound.
I think it's like an intimidation thing.
Apparently they can make all kinds of sounds.
Yeah.
But this raven was on top of this light pole, cawing or doing some noise toward it. And it's just kind of iconic. Like this
Definitely.
eclipse is about to start, and then
All the birds too.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was a freaking pigeon up there getting nuts.
Oh no, dude, ravens.
Black raven. Like,
They're special,
those things
man.
are
There's
special.
something about them.
Hell yeah.
I could talk about them for a long time.
The color of their feathers is amazing.
It's so dark.
It's so dark black, but when you
darker
look
than
at
dark.
it, but it's got that fluorescent,
Blue.
phosphorescent,
It's like a bluish,
bluish purple kind of like shape, or
like light reflects off of it in that
nuts.
tone or hue.
Snakes are like that too.
Oh, really? So this raven was doing that, and then the eclipse started, and then I'm out there. I'd gone inside to tell the guys, hey, you want to come check out this eclipse? And go back out. No more ravens. Now that you'd mentioned that, I remembered like they were there before, but then they weren't there during it. And I didn't think anything of it at the time, but it was weird because like the guys, they came out and like looked through the thing and then went back inside. They didn't care.
Yeah.
But I was out there like the whole time, and I was like, I wanted to stand in it because I wanted to experience that feeling, that weird, whatever this is. It doesn't happen very often, and it made things feel like more real, if that makes sense. It was really weird, but I kind of enjoyed that because I'm weird. Well, is there anything else you want to share before we wrap this thing up?
Always have courage.
Well, thanks.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it again.
Quite a talk.
Yeah.
I'm definitely down.
Cool.
Thanks.